Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. It is Tuesday, May 19th. One day before Nvidia earnings. We've got so much to talk about, so much to get into. A lot of stuff happening in the pre-market in regards to a variety of these different semiconductor headlines, AI headlines. Jensen was with Michael Dell yesterday at a conference, so he said a bunch of stuff that I think the street is quite curious about in terms of more agentic AI and the demand for servers and CPUs. So we'll be talking about that. We got some Canada information on CPI and inflation. We will discuss that along with ADP private payrolls. We also got those numbers in today. So we have a bit of jobs data that I think is going to be important to discuss. Not really affecting the markets too much. We ended red yesterday. However, the red was recovered intraday, not fully, but to a decent extent based on, you guessed it, a Trump tweet. And so we'll kind of recap what he said and if the market is actually going to believe that going into today. But you also do have some software names that are finally catching a little bit more of a bid. Zeta right there up another 3%. ServiceNow up another 5.4%. Really nice to see because it has obviously been a minute since we've had the software names get a bit of a rebound. And obviously the semiconductors are taking a little bit of a breather. I think that's kind of normal because the semiconductors have had a hell of a run. But is it a full-on rotation, or are we entering a more bearish part of the broader cycle? And you have certain names that are seen as more defensive that are getting a bid. That I think is going to be a real big topic of discussion going into this week. So a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. Thank you, everybody, for being here. What hasn't recovered is Cat Williams. I watched that clip 3 times yesterday, and every time I watched it, it was more embarrassing than the other time. It was not my brightest moment. But it is what it is, dude. It is. I really thought, like, I know who Cat Williams is. Because Karl Anthony Towns is called Cat, like, Williams popped into my head, and I don't know, dude. It is what it is. Like, I could just, when I realized how bad I messed up, I was like, oh, that's going to go down in market open history as one of those moments. Like, if we're talking about top 10 moments, that's one of them. So it is what it is. We will recover from it. For those that don't know, someone said to name 5 people on the Knicks, and I said Cat Williams. I meant to say Karl Anthony Towns. They call him Cat as a nickname, and then Williams came in. Yeah, so it is what it is. It happened. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for being here. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let's get into it. Michael, what's up? Martin, I'm Benny. Our Economics. Julie, thank you for being here. Iceman, your name is now one of my favorite albums. I've been listening to the Drake album. It's good. It's legit. My official review is that it's legit. I think it's his best work in 10 years. So I have been enjoying the album. Michael, what's up? Akshay, Mr. Lin, thank you all for being here. Amit is doing his best impression of a highlighter pen. That's a good one. That's actually a good one. Living on Another Planet, what's up? Shardul, Dim, Fars, Brock, Bob, Dario, Brandon, Kyle, good morning, good morning, good morning. Hopefully everyone's having a good Tuesday. Again, tomorrow's going to be important. We got Nvidia. We got a really big earnings tomorrow. Honestly, I think there's a lot of people that think it could be a bit toppy given Nvidia earnings always tend to dump. But I think there's a lot of people saying, what if Nvidia earnings are so good that this kind of little semi-sell-off we've been seeing, which some of these names, I mean, are down 20, 30%. So it's not like a little bit of a sell-off. It's just they ran up so much, 20, 30% doesn't even feel like it's that big of a sell-off given they're up like 800%. But could that earnings be so good that it just pushes the semis back into rotation? Or does it mark a little bit of a short-term top? So I think a lot of that will be in the discussion going into this week. Amit, you better have your AC on with this hoodie on right now. So honestly, it's really hot in New Jersey. It's officially 85 degrees in Jersey. It was actually cold last week. It was like 50 degrees. So we had a massive swing. And so, yes, I do have the AC on. It's kind of hard not to have the AC on even when it's like cold outside because I sweat so much when I'm like speaking because I'm speaking with such intensity. So it's usually why I have the AC on and then have a hoodie on. All right, so let's get into it. What is going on in the pre-market and how is that guiding what might happen throughout the rest of the day? First of all, let's talk about Iran real quick. Trump, he put out a tweet yesterday. If you saw a candle at 2:30 p.m. to the upside, that candle was this tweet right here. Trump saying he's delaying Iranian attacks. Now, we didn't even know that he was thinking of Iranian attacks. He was like teasing it with these like memes and pictures. But no one knew for sure if there was military option that was on the table. Apparently it was, or maybe it wasn't, and Trump is acting like it was, but Trump said that the Middle Eastern officials in Saudi Arabia, UAE, et cetera, told him, hey, we're making progress on a deal. You don't have to attack, and Iran will respect the part of the deal that says they can't have a nuclear weapon. Again, many reports going back and forth saying that the U.S. is going to give up sanctions relief and Iran is going to stop their uranium enrichment. So that's what pumped the markets. And today, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if that is enough to keep the markets pumping, because it really, I mean, the S&P was down almost 1%. It ended down less than 0.25%. And so you had a really, now you made almost 80% of the downside momentum that you had yesterday. Some stocks, weren't able to make up 80%, but the index did. And so the market was like, okay, cool. That's good. Oil went from 108 to 103. Oil right now in the pre-market, 103.4, down about 1%. So it's almost like the market's believing this idea of a delayed attack or the lack of attack. But the question is that getting us any closer to an actual deal, which is ultimately what I think is going to be the bigger question here.
A little bit about your post on True Social on Iran, and what was the decision that why you didn't attack it?
Well, other countries have come to me and they've said we were getting ready to do a very major attack tomorrow. I put it off for a little while, hopefully maybe forever, but possibly for a little while, because we've had very big discussions with Iran, and we'll see what they amount to. I was asked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and some others if we could put it off for 2 or 3 days, a short period of time, because they think that they are getting very close to making a deal. And if we can do that, where there's no nuclear weapon going into the hands of Iran, I think, and if they're satisfied, we will be probably satisfied also. We've informed Israel. We've informed other people in the Middle East that have been involved with us. And, it's a very positive development, but we'll see whether or not it amounts to anything. We've had periods of time where we thought pretty much getting close to making a deal, and didn't work out. But this is a little bit different. Now, we're ready going tomorrow, very big, and not something I wanted to do, but we have no choice because we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Yeah.
So kind of the same stuff we heard in March, right? Lots of he said, she said in terms of the delays of if an attack's going to happen. Cuban's there because they were at a Trump RX drug event, which is why Cuban is there with them. Cuban actually was pretty friendly with Trump yesterday. Again, he does not like Trump. He campaigned against Trump, endorsed Kamala Harris. But when it comes to actually getting things done, he thinks partnering with Trump on reducing drug costs is probably the right strategy. By the way, we just got a short report on T1 Energy. The stock was up 24% yesterday. Someone put out a short report today, and that's why it's down 5% in the pre-market. Leopold ended up buying this name. Fuzzy Panda. I've never heard of that research firm, but Fuzzy Panda Research has revealed a short position in T1 Energy. That's why the stock is taking that 5% hit in the pre-market right there. So, ultimately this question of Iran is once again up in the air. It is about to be June in the next 2 weeks. I don't think we're going to get a deal anytime soon, just given the back and forth that they're having. It's at least good that we did an attack yesterday, apparently, that Trump said he was thinking of attacking. But, I mean, at the end of the day, going back to the China meeting we talked about yesterday, the China meeting did nothing. And unfortunately, it was supposed to, I think, get the Chinese to persuade the Iranians to be on our side and, stop closing up the strait. That didn't happen. And so we are right back to neutral. Now, can the market tolerate that? Well, so far the market has. I mean, the market's been incredibly resilient in the face of bond yields that are 4.6%, which again, don't feel sustainable. Oil above 100, which doesn't feel sustainable. Earnings growth probably is sustainable given the cap growth. And we'll talk a little bit more about what Jensen said yesterday with Michael Dell. But at its core, it's tough for stocks to be able to handle all of this. And so far, they've done a hell of a job handling it. I know the past 3 days haven't been the nicest to a lot of these high beta semiconductor names, but the past 3 months were also very nice to them, or the past 3 weeks, I should say, even if the past 3 days weren't, given how much they've run. So maybe a little bit more of a natural rotation you're seeing, and some of the names that got a little too overheated, taking a breather, and maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. And you're seeing some of that rotation come back into the names that got left for dead, like a ServiceNow at 109. I mean, Adobe, do you guys remember this thing got down to 225? It's at 261 right now. So it's making a rebound. Salesforce was at 165 last week. It's at 182. Palantir's multiple is a little bit more aggressive, so Palantir hasn't had that much of a rebound, given Salesforce, Adobe, ServiceNow do not trade at the same multiple Palantir trades at. But even Palantir was pushing below 130. Now it's at 135. So Zeta left for dead at around 16 last week. Now it's at 19. So you're seeing some of that rotation go into stuff that's not as high beta and leaving the semis. But at the end of the day, oil being up is not good for Salesforce, Adobe, or ServiceNow. It's just that those companies don't trade at as aggressive of a valuation as some of the other semiconductor names. And so I think that's more of the rotation that we are seeing right here. I still don't know if I believe in the SaaS flip. I mean, one could say ServiceNow 80 to 109 is your move, right? That's the SaaS flip. And, is it going to 150? I don't know, but is it going to be stuck around 100 to 110? It's possible. It's just, I think you still need to see the semiconductor names really get hit hard. Like SMH, I think needs to fall at least another 5-6%. And IGV needs to get that 5-6% from SMH to think there's a broader rotation. But as of now, individual names are definitely making a better move, which is nice. So that's what we had in the context of Iran and China. And hopefully we'll get some updates on that. ADP private payrolls, 42,000 jobs is what we got this week. Again, jobless claims are not that bad, even though the labor market, anecdotally, from everything we're hearing, is not the best. This increase from the 4-week average of 33,000 jobs, it marks the second straight week of strengthening employment growth. And the April weekly gains ranged from 30,000 to 39,250. Again, the second week in May added 42,250,000 jobs. Now, the layoffs on a lot of these high-profile companies are starting. For example, Meta. So Meta layoffs are tomorrow, May 20th. A lot of Meta employees, approximately 8,000 of them, will find out if they officially get fired. And, you've seen all these jokes about Meta employees stealing snacks from the cafeteria, which I think it is a joke, even though there have been some reports of that. It does seem like the Meta employees are more angered than not, especially because, the fundamental element of this layoff, as was reported by Bloomberg yesterday, seems to be rooted in AI reorganization. So it's not just Zuck's thinking we're bloated. It's more so it's around AI reorganization. And that's what the internal document said. So as per Bloomberg, internal documents say Meta will conduct layoffs in 3 batches globally, each 4 a.m. local time. American employees were told to work from home yesterday. Meta plans to remove 7,000 people to new AI workflow initiatives and eliminate managerial roles. Reuters previously reported that May 20th would waive about 10% of the workforce. I'm not going to lie. If I worked at a tech company and they laid me off, the first thing I would do would be to take my book bag and then to find another bag from somewhere, go to the cafeteria and stock up on as many free snacks as I could, because you're not going to fire me and then told me to go out into the real world and pay $7.50 for Welch's fruit snacks. That's not going to happen. Okay. It's already embarrassing enough that you're taking away my fruit snacks. You're not going to go make me pay $7.50 for it. So I've been in some of these tech company cafeterias, not as an employee, but as someone who is just visiting the company for the day. I've seen the free shit. It is addicting. Talk about golden handcuffs. I mean, Red Bull and Oreos for free. It's like $10 to go to the corner store, try to get a Red Bull and some Oreos. So, if that was me, yeah, I get it. But in all seriousness, I do think a lot of the Meta employees are pretty upset about this. And Zuck's got to do something. His stock is down. He's spending more on compute every quarter. The street doesn't like that he's spending, or doesn't even believe in the growth that he's getting from his compute, which he is showing the growth. It's just not enough to get the street to be excited. And so he is reorganizing and restructuring his cost profile. And, maybe this will get Meta to be a bit more effective right here. So that's what we have in the context of Meta. Yes, but you eat 1 meal a day. Okay. But when I was at Palantir's office and I saw all these snacks, that 1 meal turned into Oreos, Red Bull, Welch's fruit snacks. I mean, the food they had was good too, but the food, like the catering of the food is always like good at any tech company. It's the snacks, and the snacks are also kind of the same, but it's the feeling that you get when you're getting snacks for free. There's something about that just feels incredible. I could understand if you work at a tech company why you would never want to leave, just for the snacks alone. So that's what I would do if they ended up firing. Yeah, it's like a kid in a candy store. Exactly. Chat says you're totally not being invited back now. I didn't engage in the Zyn or the Celsius from the Palantir cafeteria. That's what the employees have to do to build the best software in the world. I partaked in the Red Bull and the Oreos. That's what I needed. All right, so that's what we have in the context of layoffs and some more macro news. We'll talk about a couple other macro stats that are important. Let's talk about the AI trade, because we've got some issues going down with the AI trade. So I'm going to give some bull cases and some bear cases, trying to be objective here on both sides. First of all, let's talk about some of the bear cases. Momentum stocks are suffering their worst 2-day unwind since 2022. So forget this as a bear case for stocks or for AI in general, but a lot of the AI stocks in the context of the semiconductor names are high beta momentum. There's, when a stock goes from 100 to 800, like a Micron, or a SanDisk 40 to 1400, it's a momentum play. At the end of the day, there is fundamental earnings that are grounding it, but there is momentum. AMD 200 to 460, like that is a lot of high beta momentum getting in there. Past 2 days have been the worst for the momentum unwind since 2022. Now, should anyone be complaining if you bought AMD at 200 and it's at 414 in the pre-market, down from 472? No, because it's like, okay, you can't expect it to go to 672 tomorrow, right? That would be $1 trillion company. This thing takes time, but it's still up from 200. So could AMD go down back to like the 350? Sure, it could happen. Nvidia could go back to the 190s. That is very possible, but they've also had such a massive run that I think this drawdown to some people is feeling quite normal and relaxed, although the drawdown is 20 to 30% because the upside was, quite frankly, in some cases, 400 to 500%. And so that drawdown is kind of normal that we're seeing because we went up so much, but it also hurts at the end of the day. And you have a lot of people wondering if the trade is over, which no one knows the answers to that question, but there are some signs that we're seeing that at least in the short term, the trade is stalling a little bit. Then you have a story that came out yesterday. And I really don't like this story. This story is very scary. Before I tell you guys the story, the story makes me feel like we are getting to a point where things are becoming too aggressive. But the implication of this story, if the overall AI thesis ends up playing out, particularly for one company in one country, maybe it makes a lot of people rich. But it also might make a lot of people broke. So this is the story. Koreans in South Korea are now surrendering life insurance policies to buy SK Hynix. Insurance surrenderers are at the top 3 life insurers, jumped 16% last quarter. Saving bank deposits fell below 100 trillion won for the first time in 4 years. Commercial bank time deposits dropped 12 trillion won since February. The entire financial system in South Korea is being rerouted into 2 semiconductor stocks, Samsung and SK Hynix. Investors now over 50 hold 62% of margin loans at the Korea top 10 brokerages. Among those in their 60s, we're not talking about people who are 20 years old. We're talking about people in their 60s. Margin debt, money that is not actually yours, doubled from 3.9 to 8 trillion won in 1 year. This is from the Korea Times. So you have brokerages that are growing like crazy in South Korea. You have margin debt that is absolutely exploding in the region. And the craziest thing about this is the chart right here in the context of margin debt. It's up 140% and 32% since the beginning of this year. 5 billion was the value of levered bets in Korean stocks in 2020, and now it is over 25 billion. The craziest thing about this story is that people in their 50s and 60s are not only opening up brokerage accounts that never had brokerage accounts, which is totally fine, but they're taking out margin to be able to buy the most valuable asset on the planet, apparently in South Korea, which is, I guess, 2 of them. SK Hynix and Samsung, which at the end of the day, if these stocks end up actually being cyclical, there's that whole debate. Are they cyclical? Are they not cyclical? If they end up actually being a boom bust cycle, I mean, you've got a lot of margin that is riding on these names that will end up, leaving the bag to someone else. So the reason this story was just kind of crazy to me is because people opening up brokerage accounts and getting excited for the market is normal in a bull market. That's what led Robinhood to getting 17 million accounts back in 2021. But 17 million accounts is also kind of excessive. And what ended up happening in 2021? Well, we had a top because there was so much euphoria, so much excitement, so much margin debt, so many people YOLOing into GameStop thinking it was just going to keep going to the moon that it ended up resulting in a disaster. And inevitably, we had a bit of a bear market right there. Now, the reason this time is theoretically different is because the AI build out is different. The AI ROI is different. We've heard about all the bull cases from it. But when you hear people taking money out of their savings and then surrendering their life insurance policies to be able to get capital to buy SK Hynix, that feels a little scary. It just feels a little weird. And the crazy part of the story, again, is that people that are much older are doing this. And that's how the FOMO and the euphoria is really ramping up when people who are at retirement age or getting ready to retire are thinking that they need to double down on everything they've done their entire life and risk it all on the greatest AI build of all time with the memory component that's helping drive that, aka Samsung and SK Hynix. And
maybe they will be right, but those stocks have also materially appreciated already. So the question is, how much is the risk reward? And I think that's the broader reason, you know, some people are a bit scared of this trade. Gavin Baker, who's been early to a lot of the AI trades, here's his thesis on the AI bubble and if this time actually is different.
They're up 60 to 70%. Micron's margins are probably what, high 60s? Maybe the historical average was closer to 16%. And you've been talking about the compute shortage broadly and the shortage stacking into data centers and power and extending into leading edge wafer capacity. What is your mental model for how this evolves? You've also said that whenever there's a shortage, there's eventually a glut. How does this evolve? Talk us through that.
Well, that's been true throughout history, and I'm sure there will eventually be a glut, but eventually is doing all the work in that sentence, not glut. I would say based on every memory cycle we have had for the last 25 years, this is the time to be selling memory 100%. I was actually the Micron analyst in the year 2000. Like I remember going to their analyst day in Sun Valley. I'm a veteran of many, many memory cycles. And based on history, this is the time to sell. However, there's one cycle where you absolutely do not want to sell. And that's the cycle we had in the mid-90s, which is the last true capacity cycle that I would argue we've had in memory. And based on that cycle, we may still be very early.
Okay, so there's a lot to dissect there. Gavin Baker was an analyst. For those that don't know, he's a very popular tech investor, early Nvidia, early Tesla, early SpaceX. Like the guy understands tech and has been early to a lot of tech trends before everybody else. He was an analyst for Micron in the 90s, and he's seen many boom and bust cycles. His argument right now is that this will be the time to sell. However, if this is not 1999 and this is more like 1997, which is kind of what he's framing it in the context of the capacity shortage, that is why you don't sell, because there is that multiple re-rating that could happen. Now, maybe he'll be right, maybe he'll be wrong. But the broader takeaway I have from that is that this is not Micron at $50, $60, $70. This is Micron after it has appreciated 8x from those levels. And you've got one of the best analysts on the planet in the context of hardware technology stocks in particular, and in this case, memory stocks, as he was an analyst for memory a while ago, making the case that he doesn't know if this time is definitively going to be different, but he thinks, notice his language, it may be different this time because of where we are in the capacity cycle. And at the same time, the peers of a Micron, like a SK Hynix, are having people in South Korea. The South Korea Financial Supervisory Service found that investors aged 50 and older held more than 60% of the total margin loan balance across the country's top 10 brokerages in Q1. Quote from one of the officials, until now, for people in their 50s and 60s, real estate was the dominant means of wealth accumulation. But with the current government placing heavier pressure on the property market, the rapidly rising stock market has emerged as an attractive alternative. So you got someone who's saying, hey, I think it's the time to sell. Historically, it's the time to sell, but maybe right now it's not the time to sell. And you've got a bunch of people in South Korea saying, okay, it's time to enter into SK Hynix after it appreciated to a $900 billion market cap. None of this is to say these companies can't continue to do well. Quite frankly, and this was going back to what I talked about last week, I think all of these names will rise up. All of these names will rise down. There will be internal nuances and differences between some of these names, aka AMD outperforming Nvidia this year. But if AMD is down 10% one day, I think Nvidia is also going to be down, maybe not 10%, but Nvidia will probably be down on that day. So if Nvidia is up 30% over the next year, Micron probably has some more appreciation and some of the other semiconductor names that are out there. But the differences between some of the ones that are deeply cyclical versus an ASML that is not as cyclical, right? Because they're a pseudo monopoly when it comes to lithography. That's going to create a difference in terms of the stock price. And so I don't necessarily know what to take away from this other than realizing that leverage in the global financial system on this AI trade is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can either choose to be on the sidelines for some of these trades. You can either try to choose to jump in on some of these trades, or you kind of just see how it plays out. You know, you can go short on some of them, go max long. But the point is, a lot of people are deciding that leverage as a way to boost the returns of this trade is what's more relevant. And you know, maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not, but it's one of those things I think we all have to keep into account, because if it doesn't work, then things get pretty ugly. The pushback, though, from the bulls, which I think is very fair, is that as ugly as it may seem, as like toppy as the headlines may seem, which remember back in October 2025, there were plenty of toppy headlines. Kanye launched the crypto coin. We are still routinely higher than where we were in October of 2025, even after the whole soybean meltdown, because earnings kept going up. And I think that is the proxy by which you can make it pretty simple to tell yourself if you want to invest in certain names or not. Will the earnings keep going up? And if it does, then that's kind of all that matters. And that's what institutional investors are saying as well. Fund managers increased their allocations to stocks to a net 50% overweight in May from 13% last month. So I just told you retail investors in South Korea are taking out margin to buy SK Hynix and Samsung, but fund managers in the United States are increasing their stock allocation as well. It's not like they're staying on the sidelines. The rush into stocks has been fueled by optimism about corporate earnings and expectations of a Fed rate cut, which we'll see if that happens. And fund managers identified inflation as the biggest risk to returns, though majority still expect Fed rate cuts in the year to come, with stark differences in the view investors have on the outlook across regions. As you see right here, massive, massive change in the net overweight percentage of equities month over month in the context of the fund managers that have been surveyed. So everyone's long, which is why I think we're seeing some of the weakness right here, and any disruption to the overall narrative of the market, whether it's AI, inflation, bond yields, all that stuff obviously can, cause a little bit of a hiccup. You could have also been long them early already. Yeah, and look, that's the benefit of being super early, right? So if you bought Micron at 100 or bought ASML at 600 or Nvidia at 120, like the good thing is, or AMD for so many people here, below 200. The good thing is if these things fall 30%, like, yeah, you will miss out on the gains you could have had by selling now, which always involves the question of taxes and opportunity costs and all that stuff. But you also won't be bag holding because you bought these names at an attractive level. If you bought Nebius at 230 last week, I'm sorry. Like, there's not much to say other than, all right, you top blasted it and top blasting didn't work. It's at 190. But if you bought Nebius at 80, you can't be that upset that it's down from 230 to 190. And I think that's, where a lot of retail does sit, because retail has been heavy on this trade. But there has been a speculative amount of retail top blasting a lot of these names. And, a lot of these names are not necessarily working at the current moment. Nebius right there, 191 in the pre-market is what we've got. Adobe's up, Salesforce is up, ServiceNow is up 5.3% on ServiceNow. If the semis get the dip bought up today, I think the software names fall, just like happened. I mean, it was hilarious. Yesterday, ServiceNow was pushing 105. Trump tweeted, the semis ran up, ServiceNow went down to 100. It's just incredible how the algos are so sensitive to bidding up the semis and taking down software, or vice versa. But I think that's just the state of the market and what we're seeing right now. Credit card delinquencies, they are not in a good position. I've been saying this every month. It kind of doesn't matter every month, but nonetheless, these are the stats. Credit card delinquencies rose 0.4 percentage points in Q1 2026 to 13.1%, the highest in Q4, or the highest since Q4 2020. This is only below the 2010 peak of 13.6%, which was after the financial crisis. Since Q3 2022, serious credit card delinquencies have surged 5.5 percentage points, even larger than the 3.9% increase from 2007 to 2010. So you've got mortgages, you got student loans, you got auto loans, and you have credit cards as a percent of the balance 90 days delinquent loan types that we have. As we're seeing in Q1 of 2026, credit cards are the ones that are racking up the majority of the debt right now. What's the takeaway from this? Well, the takeaway is, once again, we're in a bifurcated economy. The stock market is not the real economy, and AI earnings and capex really has nothing to do with people struggling to buy a car or pay off their mortgage. Like, it helps GDP growth, which in a way is good for bond yields, kind of, but then we've got this whole inflation crisis, which is not good for bond yields. But mortgage rates are nearing 7%. Like, the actual fundamental economy, there are some serious cracks in it. Now, there's not the types of cracks that you would say would lead to a recession overnight, because the labor market continues to be relatively resilient. And if everyone thinks inflation is primarily rooted in oil, and oil will eventually come down, then inflation will come down, consumer demand will be okay. And consumers have been relatively resilient based on things like buy now, pay later, credit cards, etc. But everyone's waiting for that moment where, like, oh, it's bad. And that core moment hasn't happened yet. People have been calling for that for the past 3 years, that something will happen when the consumer will break. The American consumer has been pretty damn resilient, and it hasn't broken yet. And so as long as that continues to not happen, then hopefully we're going to be okay. Jensen, Dell, here's what they had to say about the AI build out yesterday at the conference that they were at.
Actually, there's potential for you in more general purpose workloads. The build out's happening either way.
It is, and the demand is exceeding the supply there as well, as you know. And look, as you move to these agent frameworks inside companies, you use a lot more CPUs.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of what's happening, and I think that's only going to increase. So
Instead of humans using tools, it's now agents using tools. And agents,
right.
as you were talking about earlier on stage, we have a billion people. We'll have hundreds of billions of agents. People use tools every now and then. Agents are going to use tools all the time, and agents use tools very quickly. And so we're going to need a lot more CPUs, and those CPUs are connected to GPU brains so that the CPUs know how to think, how to reason, how to plan, and how to use those tools. So that's basically how it works.
So, that's the whole concept of Vera Rubin. Vera is the CPU, Rubin is the GPU. And I think on the earnings, Jensen is going to make a big point around the CPU infrastructure in the context of agents and inference leading to the demand for CPUs. That's why we've seen Intel and AMD and ARM have these massive run-ups, Dell to an extent as well. But what the intersection is between the CPU and the GPU, and remind people, hey, this is why Nvidia is so important. This is why we're seeing the same type of growth that these other companies are seeing. In fact, Nvidia is growing faster than Intel and AMD, to be honest, and why their growth is likely not slowing down anytime soon. On top of that, you had Dell and Palantir introduce an on-premise AI operating system. So Palantir's on-prem partnership with Nvidia has happened for the past couple months now, and they've really been able to stress how Foundry and AIP on these on-prem GPUs makes a lot of sense. Dell is now getting into the partnership as well. So Dell and Palantir's partnership transforms fragmented data into a governed AI-ready semantic layer, enabling operational intelligence on infrastructure you control. And the on-premises AI operating system ensures data sovereignty, zero trust, security, and compliance for highly regulated industries and governments. So you're seeing Palantir once again say, hey, I know you guys think software is dead, but in order to have these AI operating systems actually operate at scale, you do need an ontology. You do need Foundry. You do need all these levels of governance, especially if you're doing it on-prem and not doing it in the cloud. And that's where Palantir has tended to really shine with their NVIDIA partnership. Not to mention, Palantir has the data center partnership with NVIDIA that they announced a couple months ago as well. So, I think overall it was a good event for Dell and NVIDIA. The question is going to be, is this enough to pump Dell? Dell, this stock was at $100 last year. Year to date, it's up 86%. Dell does not have the best margins in the world. I know their growth is incredible, but how much of that premium continues to last when it comes to Dell? And that brings up the same question around ARM, Intel, AMD, right? Can those premiums last as strong as they are lasting? And realistically, when NVIDIA reports, is that going to be a reason for the market to say, yep, we need to buy more of all these names that are out there because they're just so important to this AI build out? Or are we getting a little bit long in the tooth right here? And we don't have to tank NVIDIA, but we definitely don't need to buy as many of these semiconductor names as we have been buying. And tomorrow, we will have a better understanding of what ends up happening when we get NVIDIA's earnings. Home Depot, they had earnings this morning. I think it was a good quarter. Home Depot's down 2%, but overall sales didn't get hit too hard. Let's pull up their numbers real quick. The big thing about Home Depot is, once again, they are in the housing market directly, and people aren't buying as many houses right now. So that's kind of been the core issue for Home Depot, Lowe's, and a lot of the home builders. They beat by 1% on EPS, 343 versus 341, beat by 1% on revenue, 41.7 versus 41.5. Revenue is up 5% year over year. EPS is down 4% year over year. So nothing too crazy here. But stock is down 2%. Well, you covered the Google event today. I will not be live during the Google event, but they will be live at 1 p.m. Eastern. So I will be excited to see what they announce. Not sure exactly what Google I/O is going to introduce, but last year was kind of boring. They didn't really announce anything. There was nothing. They announced like a version of glasses that a year from now I don't think anyone has bought or even really has used. But hopefully, today they announced some deeper updates and maybe some hardware updates that actually get the street to see them in a better light. But Google really doesn't need to impress the street. Last year their stock was 150. They were kind of desperate. This year, stock's up 24%. It's up 134 from last year, pushing all-time highs. Berkshire just doubled down. So realistically, I'm not sure they're going to need to care too much. Is tomorrow FOMC? Tomorrow's not FOMC. No, it's not. Tomorrow is, next FOMC is June 26th. You scared me there thinking tomorrow's FOMC with NVIDIA earnings. But what is happening on Friday is Kevin Warsh will be sworn in. Kevin Warsh will be sworn in. So that's going to be super important because we will officially have a new Fed chair. And, we're going to see how that Fed chair ultimately acts. FOMC minutes. Okay, that's what you mean. Yeah. If we actually had the conference yesterday, that would be a lot with Nvidia. But yeah, the minutes we'll get. The minutes, I mean, what are they going to say in the minutes? They're going to say, we think inflation concerns are there, labor market's resilient. I mean, it's the same stuff they've been saying for a while. But realistically, we're going to need to get a lot more updates in terms of when this Iran war ends. Peter Navarro, they had him on CNBC today. He said some interesting things about the China trip that we just had.
Dominance. I mean, they've been clear about that. I'm just telling you what they tell the world. People should read more about what China actually writes. They do it all in Chinese, and they think people aren't looking at it because we're barbarians. But it's all there for us to see. They tell us they're going to invite us over to the mainland and take our technology, digest it, and spit us out. They tell us that. Yet, GE goes over there and hands its technology over. Elon Musk goes over there, and suddenly there's a Chinese electric vehicle company that's now the biggest in the world, not Tesla. Over and over again. I would say one other thing, Joe. I mean, the Schwartzmans and the Finks and the Musks and the Apple guys that go over there on that trip. I mean, that was embarrassing for those guys. I mean, they weren't even let into the room at one point. I mean, the Chinese do not view those folks as anything more than useful idiots. And
quite surprising, right? You got the senior trade advisor to the Trump administration saying it was a joke for Jensen and Elon to even come on the trip because they're viewed as useful idiots, and they weren't even allowed in certain rooms with different government officials. I mean, even if that's true, like, to say that publicly is kind of embarrassing to the freaking $1 trillion of business leaders that we brought over, Elon being like 800 billion of that $1 trillion. But it's like, I thought that was kind of surprising that he said that. And I think he wanted to make the point that the Chinese are not our friends. And maybe Trump was pissed off from the Chinese meeting and he told Navarro, hey, go tell them that the Chinese didn't treat us properly, because Trump can't literally say that, because Trump's not supposed to say that stuff. But I thought that was kind of interesting in terms of how Navarro framed what's happening with the Chinese and, ultimately what happened at that meeting. And I think he's saying what everyone has kind of wanted to say but hasn't said, which is that the Chinese meeting was a failure. We got nothing done. They bought some more Boeing jets and some more beef. We didn't actually get them to do anything we needed in regards to Nvidia chips or Tesla batteries or helping with the Strait of Hormuz. The 10-year, by the way, 4.65. And so as of now, it doesn't seem like that meeting went that well. Now, the 10-year is spiking, but the 30-year is not doing that much better. The yield on the U.S. 30-year has now surpassed its prior post-COVID high. We started giving out 30-year yields last week at 5%, which is the first time we've done it at 5% since 2007. Everything about the bond market is screaming that we're just not in a good situation. And if we didn't have earnings growth, obviously things would get a lot worse. But because we're holding on to that earnings growth, that is why you can put a multiple on the S&P and say the earnings match it. And as long as the bond market and oil don't affect earnings, which, quite frankly, they shouldn't. Maybe they'll affect Nike earnings and Lennar's earnings, but they shouldn't affect Nvidia's earnings. That might be enough to keep the market going. But it gets to a point, right? If the 30-year gets to 6%, the 10-year gets to 6.5, 7%. Like, at some point, things break, and we just haven't had that moment. One thing that did break yesterday, though, is Elon's potential to win against OpenAI. He ended up losing the case. This was his attorney after the jury reached their verdict.
It reminds me of how this country was founded. The Battle of Bunker Hill was a terrible loss for the Americans. The Siege of Charleston, terrible loss for Americans, but who won the war? This war is not over. I would say this is just the first step. And we firmly believe that what happened with OpenAI was wrong on a very basic level, that you can't raise millions of dollars in a publicly subsidized charity, and when it suits you, just turn it into a for-profit operation where the officers and directors of the charity enrich themselves to the tune of billions. And that's what actually happened here. And that's just wrong. And but for Elon Musk, they'd be getting away with it.
So obviously he's not happy. And I can understand why he's not happy, because at the end of the day, you know, they lost the case. OpenAI's defense claimed Musk knew about and supported the for-profit plans early on and only turned against the company after losing influence and later starting his competing company, XAI. So, you know, the jury basically said, look, although you can't turn a nonprofit into a for-profit, Elon knew that it was eventually going to become a for-profit, which is why he has no claim or right to be able to say that he got cheated by OpenAI. Whether people agree with that, disagree with that, ultimately that was the verdict. Now, Elon did say he's going to appeal already. So Elon is going to the 9th District Court of Appeals, and you know, maybe he ends up winning the appeal and having a trial again. But as of now, it looks like he lost the case. And quite frankly, this is really good for OpenAI because they don't have to worry about paying this guy $100 billion, and they can go back to spending lots of money on CapEx. For Elon, maybe he chooses to just focus on SpaceX IPO, which is likely going to be a very big IPO from all the indications that we've seen. But as of now, the case has officially been lost. Salesforce, that's up 2. Adobe, that's up 1.67. ServiceNow, 5.59, 109.28. Let's put right here in the chat what people think if software dumps or software pumps today. So not all stocks. Let's do software in particular, because quite frankly, I feel like that's the theme over the past couple of days. Software pump or dump today. If it dumps, then maybe the semis pump. Maybe everything dumps, or maybe there is a divergence, but we're going to have to see. In terms of people asking themselves about the semiconductor trade, I think you need to be very, very honest with yourself right here. You know, this goes back to the point about FOMO that we were talking about last week. If you bought Micron at 800 and you're not buying it at 661, you have to really be honest with yourself and say, did I buy it out of FOMO? And just admit I did, and that's okay, and sell it and take your loss, or hold on to it and, hold on to the bag. Or did you buy it because you thought there was a thesis and you're getting a better deal and you want a DCA? Because I think all of these names in the semiconductor space, if we're having a real rotation, are going to have a drop together, and maybe some sectors survive that like short-term drop, like software, for example. But I think it's going to happen all together. Now, some names are going to be more violent than others, but they're all going to go up and down at the same time. And there have to be certain price levels that you're looking for to be like, if it hits this level, I am buying because I want to buy, versus if it hits this level, I'm going to freak out because I bought at the top and I'm scared. Because if it does get there, which all signs are indicating right now that things are a little ugly in the broader macro and high beta, which is essentially the semiconductor trade right now, even though it's supported by earnings, which means there's pockets of euphoria, but I don't think the semiconductor trade, I think you would have to be kind of ignorant to say the semiconductor trade is euphoria, because the earnings are there to justify it. Even if there's, elements of euphoria to it, it'll all go up and all go down at the same time. So I think it's just a very simple question to yourself. Do you feel that if semis go down together, I have a certain semi, like if you bought Nebius at 230, what is the level you're ready to buy it at again? Because if it's not 190, then obviously, you probably didn't really want to buy it at 230, but that's okay. Coming up with the exact interpretation of when you want to buy it really matters. The overall thesis for the AI build out to me is very much intact. I don't think that's going anywhere. I think Nvidia earnings are going to prove that to be the case, but that doesn't matter because right now it's sector-based algos. And if the sectors are choosing software, then the software dip buyers are going to be rewarded. The software dip buyers have been punished for the past couple of months. And so, yin and yang, that's kind of how the world works. But that will create great opportunities in the semiconductor space if we do end up getting some pretty ugly dips. All right, here we go. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is Tuesday, May 19th. Let's see what the stock market has in store for us today. The markets are now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. S&P 500. We're down 0.5%, 734.75. This is basically where we were right before Trump tweeted yesterday. Right before he tweeted, this is where we were at, 734.75. So let's see if we hold on to these levels or we rebound back up to 737. Palantir up 1.3. ServiceNow up 4. Adobe up 2. Salesforce up 3. It looks like the software names are trying to make a comeback. Wow, they're all green. Datadog, Snowflake, Oracle, Salesforce, MongoDB, Adobe, Cloudflare, CrowdStrike at 620. This thing was stuck at 350 for the majority of this year. Intuit, Twilio, GitLab, Zscaler, Adobe, Atlassian, all of them up 3 to 4% on the day. The only one that just went slightly red is Oracle, because sometimes Oracle is a data center stock, sometimes it's a software stock. But overall, you're seeing some green right there. The semis are all red, all of them. They are all red. Nvidia down 1, AMD down 1, SMCI down 1, Intel down 1, ON down 3, Qualcomm down 2, TSM down 1, Marvell down 1, Lam Research down 2. Microsoft should be pumping. Microsoft is indeed pumping. 430 on Mr. Microsoft. Zeta right there, 1925. That's up a little bit as well. Meta at 608. That is down. Meta is not a software or a semi stock. Meta is just Meta at the end of the day. Micron getting a green candle right there. Do we see Micron flip green? Micron very close to flipping green. Nvidia 221, Dell at 235, Nebius at 194. Nebius also 190 to 194. IGV is up, SMH is down, but you got a green candle on SMH. Robinhood is red by about 2.65%. Bitcoin, are we down below 77? We are still down below 77, which is red. Home Depot's down 3%. Micron, there you go, flips green. Okay, so Micron's the first semi name to go up. Let's see if that ends up taking the software names down. Corning almost green. That's down 1%. Nokia down 2%. Basically the same price it was at yesterday, $13.50. CoreWeave down 3%. That's also basically at the same price it was at yesterday. Palo Alto down 1%. Ren down 4%. Again, same price it was at yesterday. A lot of these names were covered intraday, but they're going back to the same prices they were at before Trump tweeted, which is what caused the recovery. Shopify breaking out above 102, almost at 104. SanDisk, are we red? SanDisk is almost green. The semis have a lot more juice in them before people completely write them off. And not to say, SanDisk has to go back to 1600 anytime soon, but is it really going to collapse below 1,000 like some people are saying? I don't know. This is where the market has to really ask themselves. Now, granted, this could be a head fake. The whole pre-market yesterday was a head fake with the semis going green. Then they flip red. Micron now up 1%. So we are going to have to see. Intel, is that green? That one goes green, 108.87. AMD, is that green? AMD just flipped green as well. That was almost 412. ServiceNow, I think, would be a lot higher, but as the memory names and the semiconductor names come back, it's just funny the push and pull the market has on software versus semis. But you're seeing one go up and the other one go down. That's down 7%. CoreWeave, that's down 3%. Fortinet, that's down 2%. Ondas is down 1%. Google is flat. Where is Apple? Are we at 297? Apple's at 299. That one also flipping green on the day. Microsoft 427 down from 435. Down from 435. IGV, it's got a red candle. Every time it tries to break out, the semi-dip buyers step in. Even Zeta, dude, it was pushing 20. It can't go above 20 in this market environment if the semiconductor names are taking liquidity right here. Micron 688, Nvidia 221. Nvidia is about to flip green as well. Where is your Nebiuses of the world? 193, that's still up from 190. Adobe 260, Salesforce 185. Salesforce has earnings in about a week. Rocket Lab was pushing 139 yesterday. Rocket Lab is down 7% today, 121. Every time Rocket Lab has a massive swing down, usually throughout the day, I've noticed this over the past 5 days, it bounces back pretty aggressively. It has not lost 110s in about a week. So we're going to see if it can keep doing that. But the space trade is still obviously very important for Rocket Lab. ASTS also tried to break out from 89 yesterday, then got hit. Now back down to 83.24 as that one continues to be red. Cerebras. Did you guys know, I was talking to a private investor who was in Cerebras last night. Did you guys know Cerebras was $30 on December 2025? It was worth $30. It was worth 1/10 of its market cap today in the private markets. The reason they got this bid to 300, this is what my friend told me yesterday, is because Nvidia acquired Grok. Nvidia acquiring Grok basically re-rated Cerebras to get the market to realize how important inference is, because that was kind of the core reason for the acquisition for Nvidia. And that's what got this thing to 10x into the IPO that we're seeing today. So, when people talk about bubbly, like it was literally worth $30 less than 5 months ago, which is kind of scary. But maybe the inference applications of it are so important that it's worth $70 billion. I am not a buyer here, but at least that's what the market's saying. 4.9% on Cerebras as that continues to go green. What do you mean they acquired Grok? Not Elon's Grok, G-R-O-Q, a different Grok that has to do with LPU-based architecture for inference. Elon's Grok is still part of XAI. SanDisk, that goes green, 1340. So we've had basically 3 days of a semi-sell-off, Thursday, Friday, and yesterday. Today, you're seeing a bit of a rebound right here. And we're going to see if that rebound can continue to last. Shopify goes red. Google goes red. Bloom goes red. Fuel Cell red. Redwire slightly green. Costco also down as well. Is SoFi up? SoFi is down, 1530. Palantir's going down because the semis are going up. And Palantir is a software name. As you're seeing that red candle coming. It really is binary, guys. At this point, like, you're either long both, which I would say I'm long both, software and semis, or if you're like consolidating a majority of your count into swing trading, then you're in the software swing or you're in the semi swing, and it's back and forth. But we have to see a day where they all go up or they all go down. Like even yesterday when everything was pretty ugly, Micron about to hit 700 again. ServiceNow was up. That was like your software name that ended up catching the bid. Oracle, that's flat. Lumentum, this was below 850 today. Look at that, 907. As that one continues to push green. You can go long semis with a software hedge. To be honest, I think that's what a lot of the hedge funds are doing. Their semiconductor exposure is greater than, basically as a percentage of overall assets, it's almost pushing 20%. So you kind of have to short something when you're that long, especially as a hedge fund. And that's the other thing we don't talk about enough. I feel like a lot of the hedgies just need a short. And like, because you can't be long without some type of protection. And it feels like their best protection so far, Mongo at 340, has been software. And that's why software continues to be the short in the midst of the semi rally. Air Test Systems, that was down 15 yesterday. It's up 1 today. RoboStrategy, that humanoid robotics ETF, that's down another 5% after being down 25% yesterday. Vertiv, that's 2.4%. Uber, that's also down 1%. Is the 30-year above 5? Yes, the 30-year is indeed above 5%. Wow, Amazon, are we about to lose 260? That would be a little depressing for Amazon, especially after those earnings, to lose 260 right here. I mean, I could understand losing 270, but it looks like she wants to go lower. Yeah, 30-year is above 5. And that is not a good thing. But it's one thing for me to say it's not a good thing. It's another thing for us to actually experience what it means for the 30-year to be above 5. And I feel like all of us are just like not seeing the ramifications of that yet because, we haven't seen it since 2007. So I don't think all of us fully know exactly what could happen. Silver down 4, gold down 2. The worst thing in 2007 is we had a recession that accompanied these rising bond yields. We don't have that right now, which is the silver lining in the midst of everything. But obviously, it's definitely scaring people. Amazon loses 260. Loses 260. What do you think the news that flipped the software companies narrative? I think it's dynamic every day. Like, I think Figma earnings last week was really good, and that maybe, say Figma up another 3% today, that maybe helped the market be like, oh yeah, like, Claude's not going to kill Figma, so it's probably not going to kill ServiceNow. And maybe that news on Thursday night kind of led to the Friday rally we saw last week. But then you got Jensen talking about, 1,000x the level of energy we're going to need for compute yesterday at Stanford. And that could flip the narrative against, we kind of need to, even if we like software, we don't think it's dead, we need to be more long semis. And so I think you have so many conflicting narratives going back and forth, which is leading to the intense levels of volatility around both of these sectors. AMD 426, that is up 1.3% as well. Any thoughts on Hive? I have not really looked into Hive. I know Leopold bought it, but I just don't know enough about this. Same thing with Keel. I still do not know enough about this, but it seems like the dude is just buying every Bitcoin miner turned AI HPC play, Iren being his biggest one. He also has a ton of CoreWeave. He has not bought Nebius, which is really interesting to me, that Nebius was at like $70 back in like February, March. And for him to not buy that in Q1, but buy every Bitcoin miner turned AI play, honestly, that was very surprising. It's not like those names are all bad, but they just don't have the capacity that Nebius has or the execution that Nebius has shown. And so it was surprising that he went with some other bets. Micron right there, 692, as that continues to flip green. Who is Leopold? It's a guy who runs a hedge fund called Situational Awareness. He was fired from OpenAI in 2024. He did one podcast, and in that one podcast, and he wrote an article basically telling everybody how important it would be to buy AI infrastructure names. And obviously, he's been right for the past 2 years and very early to a lot of names. But the names that he missed, I think, are a bit more interesting as well. Bloom, that's down 0.5%. Nebius down 3. Keel down 2. SoFi down 3 again. How about DRAM? DRAM is probably up today. DRAM is it's down. I guess. Well, you did have some bad headlines around Western Digital and Seagate yesterday. Yeah, Western Digital flat, Seagate down 1.4. So it's not just Micron and SanDisk, which is why that one's taking a bit more of a hit. Circle, are we green on that? Circle is a little green. I think the big thing for Circle, once again, continues to be that Clarity Act. Circle's entire business is rooted in stablecoins. And so we need clarity on the stablecoin business in the context of bank yields. And, it did pass the House committee. Now it has to get through the Senate. But until that happens, I think, that might be priced in before it happens. But obviously, that's what Bitcoin, ETH are all waiting for to get that clarity. Bitcoin right there, 76,750 as well. Where is oil? I think we're spiking up. We are indeed spiking up. Crude 104, Brent crude 111. That's green for oil. Goldman Sachs risk appetite indicator has surpassed the levels at the start of the year and is close to the highest reading on record. Wow. Okay, so Goldman saying we think people are a little bit bullish. SanDisk got a price target upgrade from Citi. Oh my, $1,300 to $2,000. See, the price targets are a little bit of a catch-22. Either the analysts are full of crap and they're increasing the price target after, the name has already run so much because, they want to convince people there's more upside and be right on the story. There's the Goldman Sachs risk appetite indicator, or the price target increases are a top signal, which, to be honest, there's a very classic example that the price target increases were a top signal, and it's none other than one of my favorite stocks, Robinhood. When it was getting price target increases up to the 130s, 150s back in October and November of 2025, that ended up being the top. Those were the analysts that were chasing it, putting on crazy price targets when it was unsustainable for Robinhood to hold on to those levels. So it's not like we haven't seen the analysts chase a stock and then be dead wrong about where the price goes. And then they downgrade it after bad earnings and they say, well, this thing changed and, it is what it is. Rock Lab right there, 123.50. As that's down 5%. Is Poet getting destroyed? Poet is getting a little destroyed, 11% down. It peaked at 25 on Friday. Now down to 1260. ServiceNow, are we getting a pump? We're getting a little bit more of a pump, 107. It was at 110 in the pre-market. It got all the way down to 105. So there's your rebound right there. Snowflake, is that moving? Snowflake, 5%. That is also moving. This one got hit pretty hard 2 weeks ago. So you're getting a broader move of here. Iran, are we down? Iran, we are down. 47.64. That's down 5. See, that's the worst thing about an AI stock is that if it hasn't moved all year, if AI stocks take a drawdown, those same stocks will take a drawdown, right? It's kind of like the software names, if they get caught up in the drawdown of the broader market, even though like Meta and Microsoft, I guess, are better examples. They haven't moved all year, but if the market, corrects, Meta is going to correct. Meta is just such a big part of the market. So is Microsoft, that it's kind of inevitable. Microsoft bounced at 430, now at 425, as that one is down. All right, SoFi, you got 14 cents from not going below $15. If it does, going to be a little ugly right here. I don't see a reason for the 3% drop, guys. I don't see a headline here on SoFi. It's just how the market's treating this name at the moment. Snowflake's still up 5.7. Hood's also getting hit, so it's probably all fintech together today out of favor. PayPal, that's also down. Affirm, that is also down 1.6. Airlines are down. Well, the yields, I mean, yeah, that's a good point. Look, the yields are probably signaling to the market that we're not going to get a rate cut this year. And although SoFi reiterated their guidance with no rate cut, and although a lack of rate cut is kind of actually good for Robinhood, if you look at their net interest revenue, you know, you kind of need rate cuts to get the market to give these stocks a premium. Delta's down 3 as well. And Southwest down 2. Without that rate cut, it's not a good thing. That airline's down 4%. That's probably why XLF hasn't caught a bid. I mean, XLF, the banks in this country are sitting on around $700 billion of paper losses because many of these banks issued rates, mortgages, loans at 2% in 2021. Rates are now 3.75. They were at 5.5 at one point. So the paper losses have been slowly coming back to life as we've cut rates, but you know, those banks are sitting on some pretty heavy losses given where they loaned out money at. Some people in the chat probably bought a house with some of those loans that those banks are now underwater on in 2021. And until we lower rates, it's a little tough for that tangible book value to get some love. That's probably why XLF has not participated in this rally. Palantir right there, 134.70, as that also goes red. Broadcom is down 2. Interesting. Broadcom $8 away from the low 400s. Nvidia's not down that much today. Nvidia's still holding to 220 like it was yesterday. Micron is still green by $1.82. But you are seeing a bit more pain right there. Nebius, that's down. Where is Amazon? Nebius loses 190. Amazon loses 260 officially, potentially losing 259 right here. Affirm down 1%. SoFi down 2.8. Yeah, it's funny that Cerebras is catching a bid in the midst of this, right? Like, your big AI names down 5 and Cerebras up 4. It just feels a little weird. Bernstein says we maintain our underperform on CoreWeave, and we have a price target of $67. Wow. I think this is the same guy. No, it's a different person. But Bernstein was pretty bearish on AMD for a while as well. There was some big news yesterday with Blackstone and Google in the context of data centers. And that could also be a reason why some of the neoclouds are getting a little hit right here. So Wall Street Journal reported that Blackstone plans to invest up to $5 billion into a new AI cloud venture built around Google's TPUs to rival GPU neoclouds like CoreWeave. Google will supply the TPU software and services. Blackstone will reportedly be the majority owner. The venture aims to bring 500 megawatts of AI capacity online by 2027, roughly enough electricity to power a mid-sized city. This is Google's biggest push yet to commercialize its in-house AI chips outside of its own cloud. And Google has already signed a bunch of these TPU deals with Anthropic and Meta, which would lead them to being able to finance the essentially their own version of a neocloud. I think if Zucks did a partnership like this with Blackstone, like Google's doing, Meta would be up 20% because the street is waiting for Meta to sell compute. But Zucks is, I think, so, how you would say, like dogmatic and ideological about building Meta superintelligence that he doesn't want to sell the infrastructure. He wants to use it to build the best AI. And will that work or not? You know, no one really knows yet. But Google's like, all right, we don't need to have the best AI model in the world. ChatGPT and Claude can win. As long as we are getting that juicy cloud revenue, we kind of don't care. I feel like that's how Sundar has been framing this. And that's why Google is signing up into these deals. Nubank, is that getting hit? Nubank is up a little bit, but still down on the day. Stubborn was the word I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you, Zach. I ended up saying dogmatic, which was a politically correct way of saying stubborn. So yes, that's what I mean to say. He's a little stubborn when it comes to his AI thesis. Polymarket partners with NASDAQ to offer prediction markets on private companies, allowing users to trade based on valuation, IPO timings, and secondary market valuation. So you're seeing more of the prediction markets team up with the traditional financial companies. On top of that, last night you had the SEC reportedly considering an innovation exemption that could allow tokenized stocks to trade on DeFi platforms. Bloomberg says the agency may permit third-party stock tokens even without approval from public companies that they track, meaning platforms could create tokens tied to like Apple, Tesla, Amazon, etc. They'll be able to trade in a tokenized manner, which obviously would be a big win for tokenization writ large, but it would also be a new level of innovation for the traditional financial system. So SoFi 1530, Microsoft 429, Meta 609, up from 605 of the day. Is Tesla below 400? Tesla is $1 away from going below 400. You know, I was rewatching that Ron Barron interview today. I missed when he said what he said last week, but do people realize he said he's buying $1 billion of SpaceX at the open? Meaning at whatever price he said he already set his order in. And if it opens at 2 trillion or 2.5 trillion or whatever, he's going to get filled for $1 billion of SpaceX stock. So, you know, I know the guy's made a lot of money on SpaceX, but he really is convinced that this thing is going to be a $20, $30 trillion company because he doesn't have to do that. Like, he bought it when it was worth like less than 100 billion. Like, he doesn't need to buy SpaceX at 2 trillion, $1 billion worth of it. So I think he's convinced that Elon will merge SpaceX and Tesla. And that's really why he's trying to put in that billion, because he knows that's going to be way more valuable than just SpaceX, which is why Tesla at 400, who cares, right? If it ends up merging with SpaceX long-term, that might end up happening. Having said that, you know, the valuation on Tesla stand on its own, if you compare it to some of the other AI names, obviously is a bit up there right now. Nvidia 221, that's down 0.23%. Okay, so your AI names, your memory names, your photonics names, they all pumped and they all dumped. Lumentum 909 to 875, Micron 701 to 682. SanDisk, did we go red? SanDisk 1355 to 1331. That is now red, which means I'm expecting the ServiceNows of the world to once again get back above 110. There we are, back above 110. It is actually comical how predictable the semi software give and takes are. Like, if you have the slightest inclination that semis are about to dump, you immediately go long software, and then boom, you just take the arbitrage in between. And then vice versa. You see ServiceNow about to dump, you know that Micron's probably coming back. Like, it's kind of hilarious that that's happening every single day in this market. And now it's just becoming so obvious. Google down 2%, 388. Yeah, Jane Street vibes, basically, right? I mean, you're seeing that get hit a bit harder. Figma as well, pumping 25.50. What would be a good strike for puts on Corning and how far out? Well, it depends on how far you want to be assigned on those puts. Corning, again, 150 to 160 is that key level that you have Corning at 150, 160, you probably have Micron below 600. And so that's where, again, I think the real buy is. I don't think the real dip is now. I think this is a dip, and it is theoretically a viable dip if the semis, but the real dip on a Corning, 150, 160, the real dip on a Micron, 500 to 575. The real dip on a Nebius at this point to me is still, 130 to 145. I don't know if we get those levels. So those are the strikes that I'd be looking at if you were selling puts and, probably a month, 2 months out. If we were to have them, I think it would happen around July when usually semiconductor stocks go down, or not just semiconductors, tech stocks in general go down. But, will the software rotation allow those software names to hold up in the midst of that happening? Well, we talked about it yesterday, right? We talked, like, a lot of people have kind of the same price targets on, Dell. Dell to me is not a buy until we get closer to 170. Like, it's appreciated a lot. I'm just not going to be paying those hardcore levels. You need CoreWeave probably gets closer to 70 when it becomes about, like, these names have to go. Like, CoreWeave 130 to 98 is not a dip. It is a dip theoretically, but it's not really a dip because CoreWeave went from 60 to 130 in like 3 weeks. So that you could say was parabolic, and now the parabolic nature of it is correcting a little bit, which might be the dip because, quite frankly, this market is ruthless with actually giving people a dip. But if we actually take a real breather, CoreWeave's going down much further from here, and that will be a real opportunity. I don't know if we're actually going to get that real opportunity. That's what I'm split on. And that's where, DCAing across all these names has to be the thesis if you are super bullish on them. Nvidia just flipped green, 222. Micron flipped green again as that continues to be green as well. What else? What else are we seeing right here? Fear and greed is at 61. So that's not even getting to extreme greed. There's a TE short report. Yes, Fuzzy Panda Research came out with a short report today. I haven't even read it because it came out while I was live, but that is why it's down. Fear and greed at 62. So that's not even extreme greed that we hit. So I guess at 67, that was your quote unquote extreme greed signal to sell if the semis continue to fall off. And that's what we're kind of seeing here today. 57% of you, by the way, in the poll said software would pump. So again, the problem with trying to call when when high beta is officially going to dump is that every time they get close to a real dump, they end up coming right back. And Meta and Microsoft flipping green right now because the semis are going down. Software flipping green because the semis are going down. I feel like the semis Palantir flipping green because the semis are going down. Rocket Lab is kind of classified in that high beta semiconductor bucket. It's really semis, high beta, space, and then software sitting on the corner. And maybe some of the Mag 7s with those software names like Meta and Microsoft that are basically going back and forth on this. Rocket Lab below 120 right here. But who would have thought? Down 11% today again. Again, their NAV is $7.50. Their net asset value for all the robotics companies they own is $7.50. The stock is trading at 25. I cannot comprehend why it deserves a 400% premium, but I guess the market is, which is why it's at 25, but it got to 40. And that's the stuff that scares me in this market. That's the stuff where I'm like, okay, that story, the South Korea story in the morning, that stuff's just pure euphoria. Because people are buying this thing not even knowing that the value of what they're buying is $7.50. Like the reason you pay a multiple on earnings for Nvidia is because of the quality of revenue, the margins that they're giving you on that revenue, the rate of growth on the revenue. Like there's all these different metrics that you use to pay a multiple on something's earnings. And collectively as a market, it decides if that multiple is worth it or not. I don't know what is the reason you would pay a premium to the net asset value of this ETF outside of FOMO, quite frankly, or just hype. And that's more of the euphoric stuff we're experiencing in this market. Snowflake 175, Meta at 612. On the day, UBS's U.S. retail clients recorded $274 million of outflows on Monday, the largest daily outflow in over a month. All right, so yesterday you saw some people take some of their stocks out of the market. Is Walmart green? Walmart is green, 133. What do you mean by NAV? So NAV is net asset value. So I believe that bought ETF has 140 million of assets, and 25% of that is Figure, 30% of that is Zeptronic, whatever the breakup is. But when you take the assets on the balance sheet divided by the number of shares outstanding, you get $7.50. It's trading at 25. So my question is why? Because essentially then you're paying a premium to the valuation of the private markets by 4x on all those companies, which you might say it's worth it because you want exposure, but it's like, is it worth 400% to have exposure? Especially if something bad happens in those companies and, there are startups at the end of the day, they can fail. But once again, that's more euphoria that's out there. Amazon still back above 260. AMD, are we getting a dump? AMD, whoa, $5 from 400. So this is what I mean around some stocks will take a hit. Some stocks will take a hit, but not as much of a hit. So for example, AMD and Nvidia, both red today, right? One of them is down a lot more than the other. Nvidia, barely down 0.5%. AMD down 4%. Why? Because AMD ran up a lot more than Nvidia. And I think you could say the same thing about the photonics names and the memory names versus some of your ASMLs of the world. ASML that tends to not be as volatile. ASML also barely down 0.5%. Like there are nuances within the semiconductor trade, even though they all go up and down at the same time. But if you're in the most high beta version of it, you've got to be ready to stomach some of the downside that might happen when we have these moments. Costco, are we at all-time highs? Yup, we are, which is another indication of the market getting a little defensive right here as well. Can you explain some movements on Hood? It's very simple. Bitcoin's down, Hood's down. That's it. The only reason Hood was at 80 last week is because Bitcoin got up above it. Again, there's a lot of elements of the Hood thesis, but the thesis on the stock this year is very simple. It is trading with crypto. And I think Vlad has a bit of a challenge in front of him to, Noto has a challenge to prove to the market that he deserves a multiple. Vlad has a challenge to prove to the market that his multiple, which he does have on his stock, should be expanded outside of the confines of crypto. And I think, Vlad is going to execute on that over the coming years because I don't think he wants to be tied to crypto forever. But nonetheless, right now, that's what he's tied to. And last year, it was really nice being tied to it as it was going up. This year, it sucks as it's been flat. Noto has a different problem in regards to getting the market to actually think SoFi is a fintech. But all those fintech companies right now are just not in the eyes of the market as something that's super exciting. ASTS down 4, Rocket Lab below 120. Hood needs to go to South Korea. That's actually what needs to happen. I need to go to South Korea. They're going to get a decent chunk of business with the South Koreans. Alex says, I sold my financials. They aren't doing anything. I think that's fair. Again, this year, T1, by the way, down 10%. This year, I think has forced a lot of retail investors to become pseudo portfolio managers, to be honest. And what does a portfolio manager do? If they're like managing professional money, they are in and out of positions more often than not. And that's just the nature of what it means to manage a portfolio. Now, that also leads to relative underperformance if you just buy and hold. I think all the studies have kind of proved that to be true, but it makes you feel good in the moment if you're able to get out of a sector that's not working, get into a sector that is working. You just have to be really good at timing and being able to understand what's happening in the macro to rotate. Not everyone is. I'm definitely doing that. And by the way, not is every institutional investor the best at doing that either. But nonetheless, that is something that I think retail has been engaging more of this year. Home sales, we got that right now. Here's what we have for April.
In April, when mortgage rates actually fell back a little bit from their March highs. Rates sparked at the onset of the Iran war. Now, the Realtor's chief economist, Lawrence Yun, said in a release that buyers are coming out with cautious optimism despite increasing economic uncertainty and a slight rise in mortgage rates. He said demand will easily be even higher once mortgage rates retreat to the levels they were earlier this year. But unfortunately, rates have been rising again recently now, with the 30-year fixed at 6.68%. According to Mortgage News Daily, that is the highest level since last July and higher than that recent spike in March. Sarah.
Okay, so mortgage rates the highest since July, 6.68. Home sales were at least up 1.4 versus 1%. So you did have some people buying some houses in April. Adobe right there up 3% on the day. Salesforce up 3. ServiceNow up 5. ServiceNow keeps getting rejected at 110, but still is green. Broader S&P continues to sell off right here, 734. 734. I think Trump really tried pumping it yesterday, and it worked for there's that pump right there. So 733 all the way up to 736 last night. And then it kind of just faded going into today. Is once again the market realized, there's not really a plan here to figure out a lot of this stuff, at least in the context of the Iran war. Opendoor is launching a new product, Opendoor 2.0 for agents. Opendoor is flat. Okay. The CEO did just buy 100,000 shares the other day. Too many companies care more about themselves than their users. Today, we are making Opendoor available to all homeowners, including the ones that want to work with agents, launching Opendoor 2.0 for agents. All right. I think Opendoor has a deeper issue than figuring out agentic infrastructure for selling homes. The deeper problem is none of the homes they sell are profitable, which has been the issue for a while. So when everyone was screaming that it was going to go to 82, it's like, hold on here. You got to make a little bit of profit to get even to $10, forget $82. It's hard to even look at Opendoor seriously when mortgage rates are 7%. Like, no matter what agents you put into the mix, you're going to lose money on the spread. It's just tough to think that anything AI can change it. Broadcom 411, that is still down 2%. Again, the new business model might be cool and interesting. I don't know if it's going to actually make them a profit in any meaningful way. Because at the end of the day, they're either going to subsidize the mortgage or subsidize the discovery process. And that's where they get their spread. It's hard if there's not that much housing activity and the rates themselves are as high as they are. S&P is still down. Nvidia also still slightly down. I pulled my money out of AI infrastructure. I'm okay to wait till the expected correction this year to re-enter. Yeah, look, that is the million-dollar question, right? Are we going to get a serious correction in AI infrastructure that's going to lead these prices to be looking like, are we going to get a correction to the point where we're going to be looking at a Micron at 800 and be like, how the hell were people buying that at that level? Or an AMD at 470 and be like, why were people even thinking? Like, do we get that level of a correction? Because this is not that yet. We're not there yet. To get there, I think things would need to be ugly. But I wonder if it gets that ugly, is software going to be saved during that time? Because, look, ServiceNow is not the cheapest stock in the world either. It still trades at a 50 PE, especially after it's been up 20% over the past week. So multiple compression across the entire market could happen if, the 10-year is the reason for why everything would end up falling down. NATO to consider Hormuz deployment if Strait not open by July. Oh, boy. Top NATO commander, U.S. decision to redeploy an armed brigade from Europe will not impact the executability of NATO's defense plans. NATO to consider Hormuz deployment if Strait not open by July. Wait, so is that them saying we are gonna send troops to the Strait of Hormuz if in 2 months it's not open? Which kind of begs the question, why don't they just do it right now? And why wait till July? Like if they're having an energy crisis right now, Trump called on NATO back in March to help him, and most of NATO said no. And what are they going to do if they get there, by the way? What, you're going to start shooting at the Iranians? You're going to get into a war with them? I don't even understand this headline. What do you mean we're going to consider deploying troops? What are you going to do? And are you going to start shooting without the U.S. on your side? Because I don't think you would want to do that, right? You'd want the U.S. helping you if you're legit going into military confrontation. And also, isn't that going to be worse for oil in general if we actually get into a real military confrontation at the Strait? There's no way in hell the market's going to be like, yeah, oil should stay stuck at 101 if that happens. AMD, did we go below 400? AMD is below 400. And down she goes. And down she goes. This is one of the deeper names that's getting sold off. SanDisk down 3%. Lumentum down 2%. Tesla down 3%. Nubank down 1% as well. Okay, so you are starting to see some deeper names down here getting hit. The idea has support from several members of NATO, but doesn't yet have the necessary unanimous support, said a diplomat from a NATO country. Leaders from NATO countries will meet July 7th to July 8th. All right. I don't necessarily know how this is going to play out. From Bloomberg, NATO is discussing the possibility of helping ships pass through the blocked Strait of Hormuz if the waterway isn't reopened by early July. What do they mean helping ships pass through the blocked Strait of Hormuz? That means you're going to be shooting at the Iranians. You're not just going to politely be escorting ships past through. If the Iranians don't want you doing that, they will shoot back. They've already done that to the UAE ships that the U.S. tried to bring through during Project Freedom 2 weeks ago. So to me, this is basically them acknowledging we are ready for military confrontation without saying we are ready for military confrontation. Where's oil? Oil's somehow not pumping on this news. 103. It was at 104.50. That's interesting. That's very interesting. VG, you would think, would be up on this news as well. VG slightly up, but basically flat. Yeah, AXTI. See, it's weird. AXTI, you would think this is a name that gets hit badly today if AMD's down below 400. And that's not happening. It's certain names that I think ran a little too hard, even though AXTI ran like crazy over the past year, that are getting the brunt of the pain in the semiconductor trade, and others that are not. Like Micron, 662. If it loses 660, we're taking out the lows from yesterday. Nvidia down 1.4. Not as aggressive as some of the other ones. Yeah, and why is Cerebrus pumping? Like, what? This is such a weird market day. Oil should be up way more based on this NATO headline. Unless the market just thinks, oh, NATO's not actually going to do anything. They're just saying it to say it, which maybe that's how the market's interpreted. But oil should be up way more. Cerebrus should not be up right now. Like, why is this up? And then the indices, you would imagine, would be getting hit a bit worse. And then some of these super high beta semiconductor names should be getting hit even worse if AMD, which is high beta, but it's not as high beta as some of these like sub $20 billion companies are getting hit. A lot of random stuff going on right there. DXY, yeah, where is Delta's also down, or Dell is down? Where is your Dixie today? We are at 99.30, so the dollar index also getting a bit of a pump. ASTS down 7, your space names, Rocket Lab down 10. We're taking a little tumble here. Little bit of a tumble on the space names. Honestly, though, again, like I love Rocket Lab, but 139 just felt kind of stupid yesterday. Like, that's my personal opinion. I don't think that valuation makes a ton of sense. Granted, how low does it go? Does it settle in around that 115, 120 range and just consolidate there, which probably is healthier? Or is this going to spike right back up? Intel, I'm waiting for Intel to go below 100. Like this one, I was looking at Intel's numbers last night again. It really makes no sense, dude. Like I get agents, CPUs, whatever, like Taiwan hedge, but the numbers, like what people are paying for is a bit aggressive on Intel. So I wonder if that one settles in back into the 80s and 90s, which would be, I think, a little bit more reasonable. And that's the other thing for some of the semiconductor stuff. I think people, they don't need to see Intel go back to 40. They don't need to see AMD go back to 200. But the level of parabolic price action that we saw back in April, I think it just made people feel uneasy. Now, if you were in those names, you felt great, right? But even if you were in those names, you probably felt a little uneasy at some point. You're like, I think Tanner loves Nebius, but even at 230, he's like, okay, this is getting up there, right? Like this doesn't have to go that far that quick, because what goes up that quickly comes down that quickly. And you're starting to see some of that happen right here. Nvidia 219. This was the only one that was lagging for the whole year, so this one's not getting hit as hard because it didn't go up that hard. But obviously the other ones are. Iran down 6, Meta at 610. Top NATO commander, a total of 5,000 U.S. troops will be pulled out of Europe. Okay, that's what Trump also said a few weeks ago. So you might have a influx of different troops leaving and entering from NATO. The Qs, we got to be below 700, right? The Qs, yep, below 700, 698. CoreWeave is down because of Cerebrus. That actually, I didn't think of that. But if CoreWeave is down because of Cerebrus, theoretically, it's going to sound stupid to say, but theoretically, Nvidia should be down because of Cerebrus, which I guess is happening today. But I think Nvidia is down more so because the broader semis are down. But if CoreWeave's a proxy on Nvidia GPUs and Cerebrus is the antithesis of Nvidia GPUs in regards to inference, maybe there's a pair trade happening there. Maybe the street's using CoreWeave as their Nvidia proxy without actually selling Nvidia because they know that would be kind of dumb to do that. Lumentum 850. That was almost at 1,100. Micron, did we lose 660? We have lost 660. 659 on Mr. Micron. Nokia, that's down. Open Door, it's down. ServiceNow. ServiceNow should be going up right now. It should be catching a bid. AMD's down, Micron's down. ServiceNow should be hitting your 110 levels. So the fact that that's not flipping maybe is a little bit more around the broader market taking a dip, which obviously S&P down 1%. We're seeing that take a dip right now. UAE Defense Ministry says drones were launched from Iraq. Okay, we covered that news last week around the UAE drone war they were having. UAE Defense Ministry said it detected and dealt with 6 drones in the past 48 hours launched from Iraq. What is this headline? Please don't tell me this is real. Trump makes fresh Greenland play after Xi talks as China's Arctic ambitions loom. Trump reportedly wants oversight of Greenland's minerals deal with Beijing. So I guess this article is implying that Greenland was a proxy to China back in February, and Trump gave up on it. Looks like looks like he wants it back. Oh my gosh, dude. There's too many red flags, guys. There's too many red flags. Bond yields, oil, semi-trade unwinding. There are too many red flags that we're seeing right now. I don't know. Yeah, Walmart all-time highs. Now, granted, this is usually when something steps in and changes the narrative, but I don't know. Do we get that? Poet down 14, Bloom down 5. Look at Bloom, lowest it's been in 5 weeks, 244, DRAM down 5. This day is the exact reason for everyone that was struggling with FOMO over the past 3 weeks, including myself. I'm not, you guys are not alone in terms of struggling with FOMO when you're seeing these stocks go parabolic and seeing your portfolio literally be flat or red on a day when the S&P is hitting new all-time highs. Like, that's not fun for anybody. But this is why you don't give in to that FOMO, because that shit, it can easily go both ways. And as much as it hurts on the day that it's green, it really feels better on the day that it's red, not because other people are losing money, but because you're not the one that got stuck at the top. Like, it's what feels worse is if you bought the top. I would rather be on the sidelines for an entire year than not buying the top. Because when you buy the top, you're not going to recover for a while. And you're going to be justifying to yourself, well, you have to DCA and this. And it's just like, I'd rather just not be in the story. I don't care. I don't need to be in the story. You guys can make money. I can sit on the sidelines and watch everyone make money and just hope that I'm not the one who ends up losing my money, because I probably am going to lose my money if I ended up missing the story in the first place. Tesla right there at 396. Like, people have to agree with that, right? It is so much better to be on the sidelines. And the days when it's mooning, it's like, you feel like shit. But it's a certain type of bad feeling versus if you give in to the feeling and just buy the top and then it goes down and you're like, well, the fundamental thesis that I've done mine. There is no fundamental thesis. You bought into the top. That's it. You FOMO'd. It is what it is. You FOMO'd. So it's better to be a bottom. See, that's a funny joke. I'm not going to answer that because people already know how my answer will be interpreted, but it's a funny joke for those that don't know. What's the heat map looking like? Let's pull that up. Okay. Heat map. What we got? Then you become a community member. Exactly. And I've become a community member of too many freaking names over the 5-year journey, to the point where you just, you realize you don't want to be a community member unless you genuinely believe in the name and you think there's a opportunity. Like, people were trying to convince me to buy bot over the weekend. A couple people texted me. They're like, don't you think humanoid robots are big? I'm like, bro, what do you, the NAV is $7.50. Are you retarded? You're paying $40? Are you an idiot? What are you doing? Why are you paying that premium? We know how this is going to end. This is not going to be funny. All your semis are down. All of them. Some of your software names are flipping a little green. And so it's just one of those things where you don't want to get hit with that. It's also like being a Grab community member. The thing about that name, though, and similar to the other names, is they are growing and their multiple is reasonable. I am 1,000% okay being in a stock where it's growing, the multiple is reasonable. Grab's growing adjusted EBITDA 50%, growing revenue 25%. They have 50% of their market cap in cash. I will bag hold that name. I am not bag holding a cyclical name that I ended up buying at the top because I think this time it's different. I'm not doing that, Because I know one day the name that I'm holding, if it's actually a good company, will eventually have the free cash flow that re-rates it, even if it takes some time. But I'm not going to be bag holding the momentum play that I caught at the top. Like there's two different versions of bag holding, and you just don't want to be in the one that obviously feels the worst. Uber, is that green today? Uber is 75.88, slightly green. Slightly green right there. Yeah, like if you were bag holding freaking ServiceNow at 80, it's not cyclical, number one. It's not part of some boom bust cycle. It's a fundamental company that has a horrible narrative on it. Same thing with Adobe. I feel like the Adobe shareholders got so much shit over the past couple of weeks. But, if you bought it at 350, obviously Adobe at 260, it still doesn't feel amazing. But if you bought it at 250 and it went to 220, or even you bought it at 280 and it went to 220, like that's a reasonable thing you can hold, because look at their free cash flow. That's not going away anytime soon, unless Anthropic literally kills the company, which again is just a narrative that I think it's hard to buy into. But you can understand why you're paying 10 times free cash flow. Maybe you don't want to pay 30 times free cash flow like you did in 2021, but 10 times is a hell of a discount. Whereas on bot, you're paying 400% the NAV, and you have no idea why. Like that's when you start to feel like, okay, I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing right here. ASTS getting hit hard, down 9%. Yeah, AppLovin, this should be green today, right? This one's slightly red, but it barely red. It hit 503. This one also very strong company. Now this one, like Palantir, like Shopify, they all trade at pretty healthy multiples, even with the drawdown. So they're not going to make a re-rating like ServiceNow or Salesforce, but they're not getting hit as bad as some of the other names. Cerebras is a joke today. Like this thing should not be up 5%. This, I don't know who's buying this name. Maybe you got funds just piling in, trying to artificially pump it up, but you cannot tell me AMD is down 7% and Cerebras gets to be up 4%. Like, give me a break, dude. That is not something I would easily decide to buy into just because of that. Reddit is holding up. Yeah, Reddit should be holding up. If we get a broader recession and we have a advertising slowdown, then Reddit should not hold up. But we're not there yet, right? Advertising has been fine. Meta was fine. Reddit was fine. Reddit grew in 70%, or sorry, revenue 70%. They shouldn't really be feeling any AI cyclicality. The craziest thing about this semiconductor rally is for the past 5 years, no one's been really, really buying these core hardware infrastructure names. And now the market has conditioned everyone to believe that that's where all the alpha is, which is probably going to be right in the coming years as the data center build out happens. But how much of a premium do those names get? Like, you could be right that the picks and shovels plays should be green. Should they be up 800% in a year type of green? Probably not, just given, that's probably a bit more euphoric. And so the paradigm from software to hardware has changed. But now the question is, do you give a massive premium to the hardware names indefinitely? And I think that's what the market is trying to navigate with. Meta right there, 609. And you especially can't do that when they don't have the best margins and bond yields are, pushing 5%. Intel, are we below 100? Not yet, 103. At what price do you think AMD is okay to buy? I don't know, because I bought this thing at 208. I'm not buying it at 395. Like, I'm just I'm not doing that. I really don't know what price is appropriate. Who's buying the AMD dip? Put in the chat. Like, if you're a super AMD bull, is this your dip? Which, look, it probably could be the dip. If we get a rebound tomorrow, all these stocks are going back up, or even in intraday. It's just, again, the risk you're taking on for some of these names. It's like, it just feels a little scary going to sleep at night knowing a 6% move was the dip you bought, and that 6% does not have to be the only 6% move you see. As yields keep going up, it's tough. Now, 5 years from now, you think AMD is a $1 trillion company? Doesn't really matter. You bought it at 396, 420, 350, right? Like, it really is not that big of a deal. But every time you say that, people are like, oh yeah, I'm a long-term investor. But no one really, 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 really has the the ability to be freaking immune to the short-term volatility, even if they think they're a long-term investor. I mean, some people do, but even for me, it's a little bit tough. Sled says no. I sold 60% of my position. MK Fight says no. My average is 115. My friend just texted me. He said, dude, I'm listening to your stream. I think you're right about Cerebrus, but can you please stop talking shit? And he just texted me a screenshot of his position. All right, I will stop talking shit about Cerebrus. He's got a little bit of money on the line on this one. A little bit of money here. Even though I don't think I'm influencing Cerebrus here. I think the powers that be are... what I think is happening right now is a hedge fund is artificially pumping it to make it seem like Cerebrus is a good buy in the midst of the semi-sell-off. And in reality, this shit is probably not a good buy right now. That's my take. That is my take. Yes, please stop talking about... Wow, okay, a bunch of you guys loaded up on Cerebrus right here. I think it's always funny when people think I actually control a $70 billion... Like yes, I have a retail audience, but dude, this is a $70 billion company. Like whatever I say here is not going to influence it. I don't influence ServiceNow if I get bearish on ServiceNow. I don't influence CoreWeave if I get long CoreWeave. Like these are not microcaps that are $100 million. That, yes, you could have a real influence on, but I don't, talk about those names. So whatever I say about Nvidia, trust me, is not going to be affecting Nvidia. 218 right there. You're being modest. No, I'm not even being modest. These are the powers that control, the algorithms that control these multi-$100 billion companies are not affected by a retail investor who has an audience speaking about it. Like it's not that easy for that to happen. There's nothing I could say that could affect Meta and Microsoft. Maybe it would influence a few people to buy or sell it if they're listening, but it's not going to affect the actual internal economics of the company or how it's traded. Palantir right there. Even anything I say about Palantir is not going to have an impact. Maybe when Palantir was $7-8, it had a little bit of an impact because there was no one talking about it. But now it's like these companies have taken a life of their own. Bed Bath & Beyond is down. Build-A-Bear Workshop is up 5% today. Chris did pitch Build-A-Bear Workshop. I don't think he bought the name. Chris, did you buy this name? What's the short float on this? I know he gave the pitch a while ago. Short float on this is probably pretty heavy. 21%. Yeah, well, it's not as heavy as like a HIMS. No one has been able to influence HIMS, bro. There's a lot of content creators that talk about HIMS. No one has been able to get this thing to move. That's a funny day, though, in the markets, right? Nvidia's down 2%. Freaking Build-A-Bear Workshop is up 5.3. Bearish AI, bullish bears. Exactly. Exactly. Trust me, we know you have no influence. Grab is doing nothing. See? Exactly. If I had any influence, this thing would not be stuck at a $14 billion market cap with $7 billion in cash, growing 50% adjusted EBITDA. That wouldn't be happening. Although, again, I think it is pretty cool to see Renaissance Technology is getting it. They got in with Hood 2 years before it ran. They got into Palantir 2 years before and they bid. Dude, Hood and Palantir were their number 1 and 2 positions for the past 3 years. Or sorry, for the past 2024, 2025. They started trimming at the end of last year. So basically, they loaded up 21, 22, and 23 on both those names heavy. And then they rode them up 24, 25. Still big positions for them, but not top 2 anymore. So it is interesting to see them enter into the name. Lumentum right there down 3%. As well as that's starting to get hit. We need Kevin Zhu to pump our Nvidia bags. It's our only hope. Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's part of the reason bot pumped the other day. I remember I told you guys about that guy who's like trying to double his money by going all in on one stock, or sorry, like 10x his money by going in on one stock every single day. And he's picking like a new stock. That is the real reason I think bot pumped. Because, no one knew about this name. And so his post got like 1 million views. Like that actually can have an influence. But I don't think he could influence Nvidia, It's the smaller names that are out there. Or like even a Figma. Figma's still a $13 billion company. That's a lot of momentum there. We need Jose's to pump semis. That's exactly correct. Is Trump live? What do you guys mean he's live? Is he actually live? He was live yesterday. He is live. Okay, let's go to Trump. I think he's talking about the ballroom in the White House.
We go directly right to the roof of the building. And again, we call it a drone port. It's set up for unlimited numbers of drones. Purposely, we don't have any air conditioning equipment up there because we don't want anything coming down through the pipes. If anybody gets, normally you'd have a lot of air conditioning equipment on the roof. We built it all inside the building, inside the case of the building, because we don't want to have anything having to do with air or air quality or any problems playing with the air. So you'll notice it's a dead flat roof with no equipment on it. All of the equipment is inside of the building, and that's for safety reasons. Normally you'd do it a lot less expensive. You do it a different way. So all of this was paid for by myself, and because I keep hearing like, we are making a gift of this one. This is a gift. This is not going to be paid for by the taxpayer. We have a judge that thinks it's a terrible thing that we're making a gift. He said it's terrible that we're making a gift that should be paid for by the taxpayer. That's one I've never heard before, but I'm sure maybe, I don't know, maybe he doesn't understand. This is a gift to the United States of America. And more than a gift, it's going to be one of the most beautiful buildings that's ever been built in the country or in Washington, D.C. So here's the other facade, see over here. And again, this is taken, these great classical buildings, they're taken out of different parts of the world from very glamorous times. This is Rome. They like the flat roof. Greece likes they call it the triangles, and you see that. This is a porch that looks out over the city. Also, it's developed in such a way that we can have military there, but the entire roof is developed for military. They're very high. They're higher than just about anything else. They have a 360-degree vision of Washington, D.C. They have a massive drone capacity. Not only is it drone-proof, if a drone hits it, it bounces off. It won't have any impact. But it's also meant as a drone port, so it protects all of Washington, the roof of the building. Okay? Now, does anybody have any questions? If you want, you can take, I think you can bring your camera down. But you might want to take a look at the complexity. These are all different rooms out here. They're building a hospital. They're building, it's a military hospital. They're building all sorts of research facilities, also meeting rooms.
Okay. Guess we're remodeling the White House here. Trump said he paid for all of that, so I guess he's trying to get out the argument that it's taxpayer dollars that are paying for that stuff. Market's trying to come back a little bit. You got a couple green candles coming up on the semiconductor names, but still red. So it looks like they're building a drone port, a medical hospital, the ballroom, and more. It's kind of crazy, bro. He's just in front of the White House. You hear all the construction in the background. He's like, yeah, this is what we're doing. Like, he loves the attention. He loves being in the moment. He loves, like, freaking getting people to, like, be excited about what he's doing. He really does embrace it. And he is embracing it here with this new construction. Walmart, 134.37. What drones are they using? Yeah, like, what? Tell us the name of the ticker, bro. That's all we care about. Ondas down 7. What is the name of the ticker? Swaps imply over an 80% chance of a Fed rate hike by the end of 2026. Okay, let's do a poll in the chat. What do people think? Rate hike, yes or no this year? Hike by 2026. I don't think we're actually going to do it, bro. I think if Kevin Warsh hikes, I just think Trump might actually lose his mind. And I don't know if we're ready for that. I really don't. So maybe he doesn't cut, but I think he'll be okay with not legit hiking. Oh my goodness. Is the 10-year at 4.7? Holy guacamole. Guys, the stock market should be down like 3-4% right now. This is not like, if we're talking about what happened last time we had a 10-year at this level, stocks were down bad. Like bad. There's no rate cut from hell that we are getting with the 10-year at these levels. Obviously, earnings are keeping up the market, but at some point, dude, this is just, it's not healthy, right? This is not healthy. Not at all. And oil's not even up that much today. No, never mind. Oil just went up to 107. Oil was at 103. Now it's at 107. Okay, that's part of the reason. But still, it's not like oil's at 120. So the fact that bond yields are making a new high in the face of oil still not being at its highs a while ago, or from like the March highs at 120. What happens if oil gets back to 120? Like, are we going to be pushing 5% on the 10-year? We cannot afford to refinance our debt at 5%. We could barely afford to do it at 4.2%. I think a lot of people thought we would get below 4%, which would be kind of the buying opportunity. Or not the buying opportunity, but the refinancing opportunity for the country. And you're just not fully seeing that. Austin, thanks for the super chat. If you miss Nebius and like the company, what price would you feel comfortable starting position in it? Again, these questions are so hard because like Nebius could dip to 170 and be a great dip because the market's just not going to let it get that low because of all the reasons around why AI, compute, all that stuff is important. Jensen does a photo op with the Nebius, right? Like anything could happen. But realistically, like I feel like you want to wait for this thing to really get hit hard. And I don't know, is 186 from 230 a hard hit? Yeah, but it's also like 230 was kind of parabolic. So I feel like 140, 150 makes more sense. But is that being a little too greedy to ask for that from the market? AMD right there, 397. Well, what is kind of concerning is every day if we make a new low, even if we recover intraday, it means the market's ready to sell these stocks off a little bit, even if they recover towards the end of the day. And that obviously can get a bit concerning. Sandus right there, 1305. That is still down 2%. Chris was on last night, guys, for macro. Unfortunately, I don't think he'll be able to come on today because he's working, but he was on yesterday for macro Monday. Usually we do Thursdays. We weren't able to do it. And I mean, for those that were on that episode, I mean, you heard his take. His take is primarily rooted in this idea that at this point, the war is one of those things that's not necessarily going to be resolved as easily from Trump. You've got a lot of other players involved, including Israel, that are trying to figure out, how they want the either war to come to an end or the war to develop, or for what the ceasefire treaty will actually entail, what the nuclear enrichment will entail. And that stuff's just not ending anytime soon, even though, yesterday's Trump's tweet was a joke, bro. It's like he hyped, like, remember that day in April where he said death will come to a whole civilization, basically dog whistling a nuclear weapon. He didn't literally say it, but if you're talking about you will destroy an entire civilization, like a lot of people could tell the implications of it. And then he said that in the morning in the pre-market, and then after the close, he announced the ceasefire that day. Like yesterday, I think he wanted one of those moments where he was like, I was going to attack. I really was. But then MBS called me up and he told me not to. And you know what? I like him. He's a good friend, so I'm not going to attack. And it pumped the markets for like an hour. But by the time the markets closed and we got into the futures, everything came back down again. So I think the strategy has just been played over and over again. And I don't know exactly if it's easily going to work. Let's get back to him live and see if he's answering any major questions around Iran this time as well.
They want to have a nuclear weapon to blow up the Middle East and to blow up, frankly, the world. It's not going to happen. Mr. President, nice to see you, by the way. How close were you striking Iran? I was an hour away. We were all set to go. You're talking about yesterday. Yes. We were going to be striking it would have been happening right now. Yeah, it was all done. The boats, the ships are all loaded. They're loaded to the brim. And we were all set to start. Mr. President, a big Gulf They said that they feel they've had for the first time in almost 47 years. You know, Iran's been the bully of the Middle East for 47 years. I mean, literally the bully of the Middle East. And they're nasty, very nasty, very dangerous. They wanted a nuclear weapon. Had I not terminated Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, had I not terminated it, see, that's the win. That can't happen with the real structure.
What do you want to see
You're talking about Cuba? Well, we're going to see. Look, Cuba's calling us. They need help. Look, Cuba is a failed nation. Cuba needs help. And we'll do that. Just hold them, though. It's like an exercise game. Give that to me. I'll hold it.
Guys, we got a headline. And this headline, I don't even know if I could believe what I'm reading right here. A former FTX executive has launched a no-loss AI trading platform. The platform is called Upside Only. Users place fake trades after which an AI chooses the ones that will result in profit. The company then trades on those using its own money. What is going on? What, like genuinely, what is, how is this even possible? Also, of course, it's a former FTX executive. No, the platform is called Upside Only. In what world could you be a financial platform that's regulated in so many different jurisdictions, SEC, FINRA, etc., and have your name be called Upside Only? Like, like every lawyer would be like, yeah, you know, you got to have the fine print inside of the name of your company if you're going to say you're guaranteeing upside only. Like, this is just weird, bro. No losses? Yes, because trading will never have any losses, of course. Just a lot of random stuff going on, man. AMD trying to recover right here at 400. Even with some of these recoveries, how much is the market willing to believe these names going up? Service now, of course, going red as the semis are going up. Open the website. It looks crazy. Let's see. Upside Only. Let's see this website. Upside Only. Dude, this website looks like some freaking course Schiller on YouTube with a Discord made it, bro. What is this? Trade with no possible downside. Free. No money down. No trading risk. And oh, by the way, no KYC. Two ways to win real how are they saying the word win? This is not a lottery. This is supposed to be a market. There's no winning or losing. It's trading. Trade without risk, make paper trades. Our AI finds the winners. We use our funds to make the trades. Successful trades pay both of us. This is definitely vibe coded, 100%. If you think you're a great trader, you can prove it, get back with our capital, or win weekly cash prizes. You're not supposed to be winning prizes when you trade stocks. This is still better than VMNR. I mean, the concept does sound kind of interesting, I'm not going to lie, but it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know how you scale something like that. I guess the filter here is that if you make a paper trade and the trade goes bad, the AI recognizes that the trade is not going to work, so it doesn't risk the... Essentially, they're using everyone's intellectual capital that's using their platform to take a trade. They're crowdsourcing all of it. They're then using AI to filter through all the trades that are probably going to go to zero or not going to work. And then if 10 people trade and one of those trades ends up being good, they take your trade, they actually take the trade, and then they split it 50-50 with you. That's what it sounds. I don't know if the actual revenue split is 50-50, but that's what it's sounding like, which is quite interesting, to say the least. Let's go back to Trump, but these are a lot of headlines coming through that are making, I think, the markets feel a little iffy right now.
I think think so. No, I think so. I am very prone toward the Cuban Americans. They've been incredible people. Many of them have lost family members. They've been very badly hurt themselves. They've been in prison. They've come to this country and they've been very successful. The Cuban American people in Miami, I mean, they are amazing people. Most of them are in Miami, in Florida, but mostly in Miami. I'm very, very prone to helping them. I mean, I think I got 97% of that vote. I want to help them. Now, they have family members in Cuba. They've been treated very, very badly. They've been treated extremely badly, and we're going to get that solved. That's not going to be hard for us to solve.
You can do that without changing the regime.
Well, I don't know about changing the regime. I could do that, whether you change the regime or not. You know, it's been a rough regime. They've killed a lot of people, but it's a country that really needs help. It has nothing. They can't turn on the lights. They can't eat. We don't want to see that.
Mr. President, how much notice did the Gulf nations have that you were going through these strikes before they asked you to pause?
They called me over the last 2 days to say they made a lot of progress in there because we have them negotiating with us, and primarily Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, a little bit, and Bahrain, and some of the others. And we have them negotiating with them. We're all working together. It's like a team. And Israel, of course, and Israel's been a great partner. And so we are negotiating together. I got a call from numerous of these people. They know the people in Iran. Don't forget, when you talk about regime change, I think it's the ultimate regime change because the first level and the second level are no longer with us. They're someplace, but they're no longer with us. So we have real regime change. But I got a call yesterday, sir, could you wait? We think we're close to a deal. And that's okay. Now, I've heard it before with these people, and they change their mind. I made deals with them, no nuclear. We immediately get the nuclear dust. And they said, you're the only one can get it because the bombers did such an unbelievable job that the mountain literally collapsed on top of it. They said us, and they thought China would be the only two countries that could even get it. But I think it's important to get it, maybe psychologically more than anything else.
Mr. President, today know. How long did they know that you were planning the Gulf nations?
They knew I was getting ready to attack. I didn't tell them. I never tell anybody when.
You're in constant contact.
I never tell anybody when, but they knew that we were very close. I would say I was an hour away from making the decision to go today. And we would.
What do people think? You think Trump was actually going to attack today? Because, I mean, we know what would have happened to bond yields and oil if he legit attacked again. Or do you think he's just saying that he was to try to make the Iranians afraid and kind of give him more negotiating leverage here?
Probably would not be talking about a beautiful ballroom today. We'd be talking about that. And no, I had made the decision. So they called up. They had heard I made the decision. They said, sir, could you give us a couple of more days? Because we think they're being reasonable.
Mr. President, today's...
Well, I mean, I'm saying 2 or 3 days, maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday, something, maybe early next week, a limited period of time. Because we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. If they had a nuclear weapon, they would start with Israel. They would blow it up, and they would blow it up fast. But they'd blow it up, and I'll tell you what, they go after Saudi Arabia, they go after Kuwait, they go after UAE, they go after Qatar, they go after, I think they go after the entire Middle East, and it would be a whole different negotiation. It would be nuclear holocaust. And there's no question in my mind that they'd use it. There's no question. And I deal with these people. They're extremely radicalized. These are not people like when I deal with you. You're a very nice guy. These are people that are seriously radicalized. They would use it. The only question, would it be the first minute, the first hour, or the first day?
How many pause a few times? If there come a point
Well,
they're no longer going to be...
I'm not doing this politically. I'm doing, look, everyone tells me it's unpopular, but I think it's very popular. When they hear that it's having to do with nuclear weapons, weapons that could take out Los Angeles, could take out major cities very quick. When they hear that, when they're explaining, I'll tell you what, when we explain it to people, I don't really have enough time to explain to people. I'm too busy getting it done. When they understand, I think it's frankly very popular. But whether it's popular or not popular, I have to do it because I'm not going to let the world be blown up on my watch. It's not going to happen.
Mr. President, today is the primary with Thomas Massey and your endorsed candidate.
Yeah.
Do you think your candidate can beat him? And what are you seeing?
Yeah, Thomas Massey's a terrible congressman. He's been a terrible congressman from day one. Dealing with him is just horrible. I don't think he's a Republican. I think he's actually a Democrat. He's not a libertarian. You know, sometimes they.
Okay, so the update we got from Trump on Iran is I may or may not attack. I am delaying based on Middle Eastern officials telling me to not go hard on them. And I guess time will tell if he ends up actually attacking here. Service now, 105.28. Dude, this 10-year is just not slowing down here. 4.679. You're seeing the AI names try to get a bit of a rebound. SMH bottomed at 527 so far today, back at 532. We can reclaim 535.73. That would be a big spot today. Reddit's at 156. Intel as well, back above 104. Robinhood getting hit hard as the AI names go down again, 73.44. SoFi, it has not lost 15 yet. It is 7 cents away from doing it. Zeta was nice in the morning, and now it's back down. So the problem with the software names is they're not all going up like they should be if we're seeing a proper rotation. Look at ServiceNow. Now it's barely up 1% when it was up almost 7%. So you're kind of seeing everything now start to take a dip, which just goes back into, you know, green or red across the board. Yes, we will have TT today. We'll have Technical Tuesday later on the close. Would you buy more Nokia? I want to see a real dip. We've got to see real dips, guys. Like, I bought it at 1390. It's at 1324. You know, it's like 40 cents, 50 cents is not a dip here. Same thing with a lot of these names. Like, these names have to really get ugly to get excited. Because if they don't get ugly and they stay flat, then if your cost basis is near where it is, then what's the point of buying the dip? Like, you're buying the dip on something that's down 2-3%. Now, Micron, that's down like 25% from the highs. That's a different question. If you did buy at the highs. If not, like, they got to really give you an opportunity. Like, let's get 10, 15, 20% on some of these names to get excited for. And at least in the names that I'm in, that hasn't fully happened yet. But I'm not in a lot of these high beta semiconductor names. Delta 6850. Also, with the 10-year hitting 4.7, I don't know if any of these names, forget AI names, semiconductor names, software names, like, I really don't know if the market's just going to be able to handle a 4.7 10-year. What about Rock Lab? No, I'm not buying Rock Lab. It's not, no. There's it's did the hard part about buying this thing. It's $67.11 was the price I bought it at. I posted the screenshot in March. That was the hard part. This is not a dip, down 10%. Amid maybe all this red is good before Nvidia earnings. So we talked about that yesterday. Every time before Nvidia, the market falls. So that is also something that could just be happening right now, which is very fair. But I think it's my personal opinion. It's kind of less of Nvidia. It's more Trump saying he wants more military action, more of the 10-year coming up, oil coming up. Like, that stuff is more of a textbook reason why we're seeing this drawdown. Also, I don't think the market should be that scared of Nvidia earnings. We already know they're going to crush. It's not like Nvidia has to prove anything. Like, everyone's seen Micron's numbers and Cisco's numbers and AMD's numbers. Like, it will be the least bit surprising if Nvidia grows at some rapid rate and even increases guidance. Like, we know it's going to happen. Now it's more so like the proclivity of the market allowing that premium to once again go into the market capitalization of all these names, which it was at last weekend when it hit 240. But then one bad headline took it down. So, like, the earnings really matter, but it's also like, I'm not afraid of their earnings. I don't think anyone should be afraid of the numbers they put up. Because with all the other semi earnings that we've seen, it is inevitable that Nvidia is going to have the best earnings of the group because it all flows back to Nvidia. Now they're not going to beat by 2,000% like Intel, but Intel was also expected to do a penny of EPS, right? So Nvidia right here is not that scary. SoFi still down, getting a little bit more pain. What about entering new positions today? Yeah, so if you're look, here's the thing, right? So once again, we'll use Micron as the example. If you bought at 800 last week, I think this is a Bible dip, because if you bought at 800, you have to like it at 674. If you bought it at 680 yesterday, I don't think 74 is a Bible dip. I think you bought it at 680 to initiate a position. If you bought Corning at 180, you initiated a position. You bought, I don't know, AMD at 406 yesterday, you initiated a position, and that initiation of a position requires a meaningful drawdown to then get excited to buy more. Because there's no real difference between Micron at 675 and 680 or AMD at 390 and 400. Unless you just really want more, and you get a little bit cheaper at price. But my philosophy on a dip is like, you need to see a meaningful drawdown from your entry price so that the DCA actually result, like, so Nvidia, right? Even though that was averaging up for me, during the March lows, that was a real dip buy, because if you just look at it from peak to trough, it was down a lot, right? 200 to 160, even if my average was well below that. So that was a real dip. But I don't know if some of these other names have necessarily done that, even if you like, if you bought Intel at 110 yesterday, is 104 your dip? No. If you bought Intel at 130, yeah, 104 has to be your dip. But you might be scared because, you might not want it at 104 anymore. And if you're on the sidelines, if you don't believe Intel's even worth 104, then you might be waiting for a lot lower to get it. CoreWeave right there, 95.28. Is that one is still down? What do you think about RVI? Do you think it's a legit holding? No, I have not been a fan of any of these venture funds at all. I don't like any of them. I don't like buying private stocks inside of public vehicles. I have not been a fan of it for a while. Granted, they have some good names, and if those names re-rate, then sure. But you're telling me Stripe is worth $170 billion right now? Really? When Hood and SoFi and Coinbase and Affirm and the companies that actually have positive free cash flow can't catch a bid? Tell me Stripe deserves $170 billion? So if it doesn't, then RVI is overvalued because they bought Stripe at $170 billion. Like, it's just that simple, right? Now, the reason they're pumping is because they have OpenAI, and OpenAI got a re-rating. But when OpenAI goes public, I don't know if it's easily just going to keep going up and to the right, because I think you're going to have a lot of people trading that name for a lot of different reasons. And it might not be the best. VRT, is that down as well? VRT is down 7%. That one is getting hit. What do you think about Path? I don't understand RPA that well. I also think it's like probably more prone to the Claudes of the world. But they're growing earnings. It's just RPA feels like the easiest thing that could be commoditized. And so if that does happen, obviously not the best thing for Path. Ondas right there, down 6.3%. HIMS also still down 1%. Yeah, Vertiv's down 20% in 2 days. Have you considered Nubank? The problem with Nubank is A, it's international. B, it's also still seen as a bank, right? So those two narratives, the growth is great, but those two narratives, not the best. Also, the broader problem, here's the real reason I think SoFi is getting hit and why the financials aren't participating. I think the street's worried about a credit cycle, like a real credit cycle, not private credit, but just like consumers and their ability to pay back debt, no matter how good the underwriting is from a Nubank or a SoFi, which their underwriting has been pretty exceptional. Navy is down 6%. This is also affecting Grab because they have a fintech business. Like, if we think the 10-year at 6.7 is unsustainable, credit card rates, auto loans at these levels are unsustainable, eventually I think the street thinks it affects consumers, and that hurts JP Morgan, Bank of America, all those names. Which is, probably why, unless you have a real tech part of your business, which is the critique of SoFi, it's tough for the street to get super excited. Are you watching the Google keynote today? Honestly, probably not. Like, does not trying to be bearish Google, but I really am not excited for their keynote today. I hope they introduce some cool stuff, but I don't know. I hope it's cool. Last year was a disappointment. Last year there was nothing. Like, can anyone name me one product from last year without looking it up that they introduced that is actually relevant today? Same thing with Meta's event last year. I remember streaming that with Steve. It was so bad. The Wi-Fi stopped working in the building. It's like, dude, it's a $2 trillion company. Their Wi-Fi stopped working. But yeah, even GTC, bro. I love Nvidia, but what did they announce? Like, is a lot of these companies, these events are just marketing, and there's not something super, super substantial that's going to change the business. So I don't know if we're going to get anything that good from Google. Trump just said, Xi has promised me he's not sending Iran weapons. I take him at his word. I had an amazing time at China. Interesting. I don't know if I would take him at his word here. Chinese have definitely proven themselves over the years, over the past couple months with these Nvidia GPUs to not be taken at their word. Looks like that's what Trump is saying.
And that's recently. Now I coalesced. We have nobody coming through. We had caravans coming through with tens of thousands of people pouring into our country. We've had it been based on Christianity and religion. So I'm very proud of that. I know I want, because I want to see Washington be beautiful. To me, it's very important. But as an example, you mentioned the water fountain. We didn't have one water fountain, and I think we have 40. We didn't have one in Washington. I'm doing a job on the reflecting lake for a fraction of what they paid. Now I've upgraded it I got so into it. I've upgraded it like you wouldn't believe. I'm doing all the walkways outside. I'm doing it properly. But it's a much bigger job. But again, we got together, and we have it's under construction right now. I want to get it open before July 4th, which we'll easily be able to do. It'll be open before that, but easily be able to do. But July 4th being a very special day, and it is going to be beautiful. Beautiful blue color, dark blue color. It's very reflective. I put a thing out yesterday showing the reflection. We did a little test. We wanted to see it. It's unbelievable. It's like a mirror.
Did it look good? Did it work?
It's like a mirror. It's beautiful.
And I saw there was guys out.
All right. Trump really enjoying the discussion around the ballroom right here. We do have another headline which could be affecting some of your memory stocks. Again, I'm not an expert on these names, so I'm just seeing this headline right here. Not sure how much it has an implication for memory, but China has a company called YMTC, and they also build NAND. They specialize in NAND technology, which is what SNDK does, SanDisk does. So as they are kicking off their IPO process, again, I know nothing about this company. I'm just seeing the headline, but just off the top of my head, if China starts flooding the market with a ton of NAND, I know there's differences between DRAM and NAND and HBM and all that stuff, but the point is that is one of those things that maybe the market starts thinking, all right, the pricing power is not exactly going to exist. Now, there might be some very specific differences that I'm missing right here, but if we're looking for reasons why some of these names might be taking a hit, this IPO could be one of the core reasons. Wow, they control 13% of the global NAND flash market. I did not know that. This IPO should be happening over the next week. And see, even if U.S. suppliers can't buy from them, the point is, if like just for security reasons or whatever, the point is, if it's it's in the market, then supply and demand ends up taking place, and that does obviously lead to more supply, which means less pricing power. See, this is the thing. If you're in some of these trades, you got to really understand all these dynamics of it, because if not, a headline like that could flip the whole trade upside down if the headline ends up having an impact. We're not sure if that's exactly having an impact. Paul, thanks for the super chat. Admit my account was up 80%. Now I had a 15% drawdown in the past week. All my investments are semiconductors. Do you think the AI trade has run its course? So, Paul, it's a good question. I think number one, you have to recognize why you were up 80%. It's really important. when you're looking at your portfolio performance. The reason you were up 80% was because of the semiconductor trade. The reason you are now down 15% in a week is because of the same thing that took you up 80%. So if you are really happy on the good days, there will be some bad days in the midst of those good days. The thing about the cycles when they get this euphoric is that everyone thinks the good days just last forever. And then you get hit with a 3-day stretch like we've been getting hit with right now, which does not mean, to answer your question, the AI trade is over. I don't believe that. I think the build out is going to last for a while, and that will inflect on earnings. But a lot of these names have also baked in that growth. And if that growth is already baked into their multiple, then they could keep putting up really good growth, but it might not necessarily result in multiple expansion. So if you're that afraid about a drawdown, you got to take some profits, man. Like if that's really, something you don't want, you can't just buy and hold at that point, because buying and holding will, you could go from 80% up to 50% up instantaneously if we have a drawdown in that sector. Micron goes green, or is very close to going green, 679, up from 652. What a freaking V shape right there. Rebound above the VWAP as well. You're seeing a massive move right there. AMD as well, above 402. Getting above almost 405 from 393. I think the SpaceX IPO will suck liquidity, and it will be a bigger trigger for a market correction. Look, I'm not excited about the SpaceX IPO in terms of how large it really is going to be and how much liquidity will be needed. But I kind of think the opposite. I think the SpaceX IPO will be the trigger for more euphoria. Like maybe it'll be the catalyst for a market correction eventually, but maybe it will be the reason everything pumps even crazier. And so the only way to kind of protect yourself from it is not chasing it. But I think it could have a bearish scenario, but it obviously could also have a bullish scenario. Microsoft from 432 to 422. So once again, that one going down as the semis once again come back up. Is this the DeepSeek moment for memory names? No, there's not a really big headline for memory yet that's DeepSeek light, but I think people will try to have that headline, and then you're gonna have to see how resilient these names are. Jensen did say, we need memory yesterday. He was with what's his name, Michael Dell, and so he's not downplaying the importance of it. Now, there's a reason Jensen acquired Grok, and there's certain elements to Grok's LPU architecture that might make NVIDIA chips less reliant on as much memory as they're using. But in the short term, like the amount of demand that's needed for this stuff, and it's not just memory, it's all the different components of the supply chain are still massive. But that's a different question from the stocks themselves and what they priced in. Figma goes red after being up 5% today. Trump says he'll let Warsh do what he wants to do. Okay. So I think if Warsh hikes, Trump is not going to really let him do what he wants to do. Probably be a little upset. But we're going to see when he gets sworn in on Friday. This is Trump talking about China just now.
Sure, they have a little ability. Their missiles are 82% gone, we estimate. Their capacity to build is very little right now because we hit all of their manufacturing areas. Same thing with drones, they're largely gone, but they still have a little capacity. Yeah, not much, but they have a little. Their Navy is completely gone. Their Air Force is completely gone. President Xi has promised me that he's not sending any weapons to Iran. That's a beautiful promise. I take him at his word. I appreciated it. We had an amazing time in China. Look, we got along very well before this, but President Xi and I had a really an amazing time. I think he'd say the same thing, but he promised that he's not sending any weapons. And, if you think about it, he gets 40% of his oil. He's not sending oil boats in, tankers in with 20 destroyers alongside of it. No, he wants it. He does want it open, like me. I want it open, and we'll get it open.
Okay, that's Trump on China, folks. We got an even bigger headline 4 minutes ago. Wow. This is a big one. Karpathy just joined Anthropic. Oh my. I think the next few years at the frontier of LLMs will be especially formative. I'm very excited to join the team here and get back to R&D. I remain deeply passionate about education and plan to resume to work on it in time. So this was previously the lead of AI at Tesla. He left Tesla, what was it, 2 years ago? He is seen as one of the basically literal geniuses of AI. This video a while ago, intro to large language models. This was 2 years ago, and it's like hours and hours of footage of him actually explaining how LLMs work, what happens. He was very instrumental to getting the initial elements of FSD up and running. That's a massive win. I mean, this guy alone, you could say, is worth a couple $2 billion, and that might be underselling it. If Zucks was recruiting him, I think Zucks would have literally given him $10 billion and say, just please stay with us forever. Yeah, an absolute legend. He's kind of been on hiatus from AI, and I mean, he's done some podcasts here and there, but he's been more like on his own and just doing his own research personally. Looks like he wants to get back into the game. Yes, that's also true. He co-founded OpenAI. I mean, that's just unbelievable, dude. That is incredible. S&P 733.49. SKM already moving on that. Yep. As that one's starting to go a bit more green as well. Dario is going to like this. He was a director of AI at Tesla. He was a founding member of OpenAI. He was a research scientist there for a while. He has a PhD from Stanford. He was a research intern in Google DeepMind. I mean, talk about someone who understands the AI ecosystem. SoFi, is it below 15? Nope, not yet. It's like teasing. Below 15, not that. Nvidia coming back. Micron coming back. 221. CoreWeave trying to come back. VG's up a little bit as well. Interesting, the semis are up and VG's up at the same time. AXTI as well. That's green. Corning up from 170. Amazon still below 260. As that continues to go red. How much do you think they're paying him? I think they gave him a lot of stock. I don't know if that guy's motivated by money, though. Like these types of people, I don't think money is going to be compelling to them. It's really got to be mission oriented, but probably, they gave him, I would say, a decent chunk of cash to work there. IGV 93.20, ASTS down 7. This thing just cannot find room above 85. When is Anthropic going public? It should be happening this year. That's, I think, even more scary than SpaceX when Anthropic and OpenAI go public. Because, we're all just assuming their valuations make sense. Like in the public markets, we know how brutal it is that when you go public and you think the valuation makes sense, and then the public markets really decide what they want to do with your stock, they can have a irrational valuation, overvalued or undervalued, for years. And we're all just assuming, yeah, they're worth this much money. It's like, are they actually worth this much money? When they go public, is the public markets, are they really going to believe they deserve to be worth that much money? Or are they going to think they're 4x undervalued or 4x overvalued? I mean, if that happens, there's going to be a lot of different dynamics on how these companies officially go live. Google 388, that's still down 2%. Cerebras catching the bid, 327. As that's green. And of course, I sold Zoom this morning. Yeah, Zoom. There's your Anthropic bid as well. Stock draft update. So Matt's destroying us now because of Rocket Lab. 51% for Matt, 46% for me. This has about a month left on it. Tanner's at 7, Steve's at 33, 32.50, and Chris is at 24. it's Matt, me, Steve, Chris, and Tanner on the stock draft right now. Okay, what else do we have? What other crazy macro news today? We got these Trump quotes. We have these 10 years flipping higher. Amazon's Trainium chips are starting to win over AI developers after years of software work, as per the information. Nvidia still dominates, but chip shortages and lower costs are giving AWS an opening. So you got Trainium with some good headlines, not helping Amazon stock today, as that's flat, or that's down 3%. I think those are kind of your core macro updates. Putin arrives in Beijing for summit with China's President Xi. Wow. Right after Trump, they brought in Putin. It's I think China obviously needs the United States for a variety of reasons, but I don't think they really respect the United States, especially because they're not even helping with the Iran situation. Whereas China and Russia are both kind of aligned on making sure Iran doesn't fail. So I guess we're going to have to see what happens once that meeting is over as well. Sam says ARM is having nice strength. ARM right there, 260. Yeah, that is relatively strong strength. It fell to 206. This thing peaked at 270 on earnings, 268. ARM trades at 50 times sales, which maybe is justified, but obviously at 270 it got a little aggressive. You're seeing that get a little bit of a rebound right here. Alpha has earnings today. Does Alpha have earnings today? Do they do? After the bell today we have, oh no, it's tomorrow. Wow. Alpha's earnings with Nvidia. That's actually the best day to report. Like, no one's going to care about Alpha on Nvidia day. So if they have a crappy earnings, they should be able to handle it. Today we have Kava and Toll Brothers. I do not keep up with Elf's products. Elf right here down another 4%. I don't know what the makeup industry is like right now. And I really don't trust the consumer. We saw what happened to Nike. So on that basis alone, to me, it's a hold or a stay on the sidelines type of play. But it is down like 50% this year, right? So maybe they have nowhere to go but up. Year to date, 33%. Over the past year, down 35%. It was at 140 October 2025. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if makeup is going to be the driving force this quarter. Nvidia 221. Emmett needs a wife and he'll buy Elf. That's fair. They did have the Hailey Bieber acquisition, which I guess was important. But since then, the market has not really been happy about what they did. By the way, there was a crazy story last night. This is not because of data centers, but imagine it was because of data centers. There was a power outage at Six Flags, and people at the top of the roller coaster already had to start walking down because the ride wouldn't keep working. Again, not saying it's because of the data centers, but could you imagine that a data center was the reason Six Flags lost power and you're at the top of a roller coaster and you have to be escorted down? That would be a hell of an experience. I'd also be pissed. Like, I'd be so upset. Be like, oh, someone making some stupid cat videos is why my roller coaster is not working. The last time I really did a roller coaster was in Six Flags, and it was Nitro, if anyone's ever been there on that ride, and it was raining. So they shut down every ride except that ride. I don't know why, to be honest, because it was heavily raining. I have no idea. This was back in 2011. I don't know why they left Nitro open, but they let us go on it 3 times in a row in the rain. Again, I don't know what security protocols they had, but I remember me and my friend 3 times in a row we did Nitro, and it was amazing. But also, like, if it had stopped, it would have been crazy. The other experience I had at Six Flags is I did King to Ka, which was like the world's largest roller coaster, 450 feet in the air, and we ended up going backwards. So we got all the way to the peak, but that's more natural because sometimes it just doesn't have enough force to go over. But that was kind of crazy going backwards. I just couldn't imagine literally being stuck at the top and having to walk down. Like that would be wild. Google right there. 388. IGV just went red. Wow, guys. It is so whiplashy. Did SMH go green? SMH is still pretty red. It's not as red as it was before, though. But it would be pretty funny if IGV stays red and SMH flips green. As SoFi loses 15. Yeah, I don't know, guys. This it's just not a name the street is happy with. Now, granted, is it going to 13? Like, are we actually going to 1450 was where it bottomed in March. Am I right about that? 1450, I think. No, it was 1490, right? It was, 1493. So actually, it is 5 cents away from going below its March 30th lows, which would be quite incredible if that ends up happening. Amit, have you noticed biotech is mostly green today? I wonder if the Ebola scare is impacting the market. Is XBI green? XBI is flat, but it's better than the rest of the market. Trump did say something about Ebola yesterday. Maybe that is a macro theme that's scaring the market. Here is what he said yesterday at his conference.
But certainly am. I think that, it's been confined right now to Africa. But it's something that has had a breakout. I could ask Bobby or Oz to say a couple of words about it if you'd like. Want to do that?
I think Heidi Overton is going to come up and give us a few words here. Dr. Overton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Today, the CDC held a press briefing that provided a lot of the answers and information, but we have stood up a full interagency shorter flight time for Americans to receive treatment there in Germany. For all other Americans, we have issued travel warnings. We have instituted just today entry restrictions for non-U.S. citizens that have been in the region in the past 21 days. So in Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and South Sudan. So very serious measures that have been taken. We are working to communicate very frequently with everyone. Your question was, should Americans be worried? Right now, there are no cases of Ebola in America. We want to keep it that way, and we are doing everything we can to support Americans in the region. Thank you, Mr. President.
And basically, they're saying they don't know, right? Same thing with the hantavirus. Like, they're not really saying it's the biggest issue in the world, but they're also not saying it's not the biggest issue in the world because there's not enough evidence to really determine how serious they should be taking it. Cerebris still up about 8.8%. So I guess time will tell, but maybe that could be a catalyst for some of these biotech names. Where's Pfizer? Pfizer is up 2%. It's a little green. mRNA. That's down 3. Nike up a little bit as well. All right, so all your Mag 7s are red. Your software names are starting. Where's ServiceNow? Dude, ServiceNow is about to go red. Oh, my goodness. This is just unbelievable. I mean, it is believable, but it's also like you can't trust anything in this market. Imagine going long ServiceNow today at 108 because you're like, all right, cool, software rotation. I'm in. Yeah, I didn't get the bottom, but I'm ready to, ride software. And then within an hour, less than an hour, it's like, actually, did you know something about high bandwidth memory? Because that matters more than enterprise ticketing systems. And then when Micron goes to 600, it's like, you know what? High bandwidth memory is really not as important as enterprise AI ticketing systems. And that's how the market's been back and forth. That's how it's been. Tesla is building its giant solar panel factory in Houston. Tesla building their, so we all knew they were building a solar panel factory. Today it's being revealed it's in Houston. So Tesla sticking to Texas for some of this manufacturing. 396 right here on Tessie. Escov is green. That is correct. Buying treasuries has, well, it's not returned as well as stocks, but it's definitely not been as volatile as well. Here's Evercore's Julian Emanuel yesterday around oil going into July 4th.
The doubt, like everyone around the table here, is that gets you to the 4th of July. Think about it. There's a concept here where if you are not celebrating the nation's 250th birthday and you're thinking about triple-digit oil, that's when it starts to bite in terms of the market and the economy, in our view.
So you've got a little bit over a month at this point in order to open up the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, what is your thing? I mean, you're not a political analyst, obviously, but even if the Strait of Hormuz is open, that could still mean triple-digit oil. So an end to the conflict wouldn't override, in terms of sentiment, triple-digit oil?
If you opened up the strait, you would get the back end of the curve start to moderate. And so you'd look through those first few months, much the way you did in the beginning of all this, until the back months started picking up to a level that we are, pretty uncomfortable with.
Okay, so 4th of July happens. We're celebrating. Tim's got the little sparkle thing.
Little. It's a big flag. It's a big flag. Thank you.
Waving, burgers on the
fireworks
grill.
at my house too.
WTI is still triple digit. Rates are higher. What does the markets do?
The market's going to come off. It will come off. I mean, and then the other aspect of this, if you go back to March, the end of the world hedging levels we had never seen. We were on here talking about that, which is why you got the degree of the rip that you did. And now you're almost the exact opposite of that, where very few people are hedged. And actually, over the last several weeks, for the options nerds, you've had a situation where the NASDAQ has gone up. At the same time, the NASDAQ VIX has gone up. And that usually means a pullback is in store. And, throw in triple-digit oil.
I think, Julian.
Throw in a new Fed chair as well, and then throw in a midterm year. I mean, it will be the most predictable pullback ever if we get a 10% pullback at this point. Now, 20%, I think, is pushing it. It's obviously very possible. But 10%, we get back down to 690? Like, high oil, high bond yields, stocks that have already gone super parabolic, and a new Fed chair. I don't think people will be that surprised. People will be annoyed. But I don't know if it would necessarily be surprising if we take that return. And it's a midterm year, where historically during this time, you kind of see it happening. But, I mean, maybe there is enough earnings power. Because, once Nvidia reports, it's only a couple more weeks until we start Q2 earnings. And once we get into Q2 earnings and we start to see all of the same AI companies continue to put up their number. Now, if there's any hiccups in those numbers, if Google, Amazon, if these guys, that's the thing also about this cycle, like AMD back at 407, like the numbers have been so good that the bar is raised every single quarter. Like Google just grew cloud 63%. Imagine they grow next quarter 58%. Like that's technically declining growth, even though it's up year over year. And I wonder if the market's like, look, we gave you 400, but we're not going to keep you at 400 if you're not growing 70%, which is basically what they did to Meta and Amazon until this recent quarter. And that, along with, the variety of macro stuff, could obviously create a hiccup. Reddit right there, 155. SoFi's down because of the bond yields. Yeah, I mean, are other banks down today? I would imagine so. Yeah, JP Morgan down 1%. Bank of America, that's slightly flat. XLF is down. Goldman Sachs, obviously all of the yields inflecting don't help. Marvell's up a ton from the lows at 90. I mean, look, if I bought Marvell at 90 and it's at 172, I'm taking some profits. Because Marvell is not the AMDs or the Nvidias of the world. Like, this one also is a smaller name that will have different headlines that affect it. But it's also like, even if it goes down to 130 and you bought it at 90, if you believe this is a $300 stock, then why sell? And I think that's what a lot of retail is also experiencing. They're like, look, I'm going to hold on to these names for the next couple of years. So I don't need to be so short-term minded and swing it, especially if I got the absolute low, which I totally understand. But it doesn't mean the parabolic high is going to continue to last as easily as it is right now. What do you think about VCX? I do not like the business model at all. I think it's predatory, to be honest. Like I think it's completely full of shit. Like VCX at its peak was implying Anthropic at an $8 trillion valuation. Like at some point you have to just say shit is stupid. They were valuing SpaceX at 30 trillion. Right now they're valuing SpaceX at 15 trillion because it's cut in half. It's like, oh wow, that's a deal. SpaceX 15 trillion. Need to get in. So I think a lot of this stuff is just not exciting. Isn't Marvell in the S&P 500 already? I feel like it is. Right? Or is it not? Because that is another catalyst. Oh, it's not. Wow. Yeah. Oh, how does this thing not get into the S&P in June? I mean, I guess if the market thinks that, well, the S&P is already pretty overweight semis, right? So maybe they don't have to be. Corrido, that's making a move up as well. It is a $150 billion company. You would imagine it eventually gets into some of these indices. All right, guys. I think that is it for today. I don't think there's anything else that's going too crazy. I saw Amit at the New York City owned grocery store last night. So you definitely saw me there. I was trying to get some produce, but that officially is open. I think as of last night, right? Mamdani launched it. It's one of 5 in New York. And that has been launched. Yeah, we're opening 5 city-owned grocery stores. Oh, they only did 1 so far. Look, it's going to be an experiment, and we talked about Mamdani when he won. It's really important to understand, even if you disagree with their politics, why people are supporting these people. And if you're an AI investor and AOC became president, for example, which I think is unlikely, but let's say it happens. Yeah, it's going to be hard for data centers to be set up when the president is not supportive of it. And so it's very, very important to just understand both sides of the angle. I mean, AOC had that viral clip last week about not actually earning $1 billion, which, again, there's a lot of people that agree with this.
There's a certain level of wealth and accumulation that is unearned, right? You can't earn $1 billion.
That's right.
You just can't earn that.
That's exactly correct.
You can get market power, you can break rules, you can do all sorts of things. You can abuse labor laws, you can pay people less than what they're worth, but you can't earn that, right?
That's
and
right.
so you have to create a myth that since you didn't earn that, you have to create a myth of earning it. There's
a certain subsect of the population that agrees with that you can't actually earn $1 billion. You have to, manipulate all the structures that converge within capitalism to be worth $1 billion. And, as a result of that, she will have people to vote for her. Same thing with Mamdani, right? And I think, the worse the economy is, the more people default into the idea that capitalism, the stock market, all this stuff is fake. And that's why it's really important for Trump to get oil prices down and get the 10-year to come down and get mortgage prices to come down. Like, none of that has happened this year. None of it. Oil's up, mortgage rates are up, consumer confidence at horrible levels. Now, the consumer's been resilient, retail sales have been okay. It's just the midterms will determine how much consumers are really feeling the economic pain and how much they consider a nuclear Iran as enough of a threat to withgo some economic security. Or maybe the Iran situation is done within a couple weeks and then boom, no one cares about this. But the midterms, I think, are going to tell a lot more people how this plays out. All right, that's what we got. That's what we got. It's always the thing about this question to me is always a bright line. It's like, can you earn $1 million if you can't earn $1 billion? Can you earn 500 million? Can you earn $800,000? Like, there's always a bright line there. And for some reason, the bright line always tends to become $1 billion. But I mean, realistically, you shouldn't be able to earn a lot of money. It shouldn't stop at $1 billion or have billion be the threshold. But obviously, that's politically conducive because, you know, being a billionaire is seen as like being an evil person at this point. And so all this stuff ultimately impacts the broader economies of how people think about the market. Okay, cool. I think that is it for me. Let's head into word of the day, and then we're pretty much done. No other crazy headlines other than we're selling off a little bit, but how long will this sell-off really last? S&P down about 1%. It's basically where it was last night before Trump pumped it. We'll see what happens with the Google event today. That's one catalyst. We'll talk about that. Tonight, we have Technical Tuesday, and then we'll see if Trump ends up giving us an update around Iran later in the day and if they're going to continue to attack. So we're going to see. ASO says you absolutely can't earn $1 billion. What Musk did wasn't easy, or what Jeff building Amazon wasn't easy. They took risks and sleepless nights. They definitely earned it. Yeah, look, I would agree. And I think a lot of us would agree that, you know, we are happy when other people make money. You know, we are happy when other people take the risk to actually win, because it's not easy. For every person who tried to start an Amazon, you had one Jeff Bezos. It's really, really hard to start a business. It's really, really hard to put yourself out there. It's really, really hard to do something in the world. It's really hard to take risks. And I think if you've ever been someone who tried to take a risk, tried to be ambitious, you got to deal with the legal apparatus to even file an LLC, you know, especially if you're not living in a state or a country where it's just easy to build a business and get things. Like, there's just so many things you have to do, so much personal accountability you need, that when you do get the rewards of the business by hopefully working enough to the point where it's profitable, which is already hard in and of itself, you deserve to actually enjoy that. And when it gets super excessive, it means you've created a lot of value in society, right? But the opposite perspective is that you've manipulated society to be able to get what you want. And that perspective is believed by a lot of people. And those are the sort of political forces that, you know, combat each other, which is what we're seeing and how it's implicating the AI trade. Word of the day. What do we got? Word of the day. We got 6 in a row. We need to be number 7. We need to be number 7. Sententious. Sententious. No, it's sententious because it's the TIOUS. Sententious. Given to expressing moral judgments or pompous wise sayings, often in a self-important way. The thread started insightful, then turned sententious by the end. I think I got it, bro. I think I got it. Sententious. By the way, did you guys see the Spurs game last night? That Wemby 3 was crazy. Absolutely freaking crazy. I wasn't even watching it. I tuned in like literally right when he hit the 3, and I was like, oh my goodness. That is crazy. All right, let's see this word, sententious. What do we got? What do we got? Give me 7 in a row, baby. Here we go.
Sententious.
It's a new chapter for the market open. You guys can't say I don't know how to talk anymore. That's 7 in a row. Like 7 in a row. That's not a joke. And I'm not, you can see my prompt in ChatGPT. I'm not like, give me an easy word. Literally, my prompt is give me another one. Every day on my word of the day, my prompt is give me another one. That's it. Give me another one. Give me another one. Look at these. These are my prompts. I'm not cheating. I'm not saying, hey, give me an easy word. It's give me another one. That's it. Like, literally, I have the receipts, bro. I have the receipts. These are all it's the same thread I've been using for like 5 months on ChatGPT. Now, maybe my celebrity and basketball knowledge when it comes to Cat Williams doesn't work out that well. But I know how to speak. I know how to speak. Okay, Steve is live. I know exactly what we got to spam Steve with. I know exactly what we got to spam him with. We have to spam him with what happened yesterday. We should have done it yesterday. I forgot yesterday. Okay, let me give you guys the context first so everyone knows if you missed it from yesterday. But I know exactly what we will spam him with. Does everyone know? I think everyone already knows, right? Everyone knows what I'm saying we got to spam him with. It was it's got to be Cat Williams. It's got to be Cat Williams. Okay, so this was from yesterday. This is what we're going to spam him with. No, it was May 8th. Sorry. It's service now. Have to be that's all pretty sleep. So the Williams and X or oil, those all come down that I can name. B or something. There's some Brunson. And that's probably it. Anobi or something. There's some Cat Williams. I think that's the only three that I can name. I said it with so much confidence, like, yeah, Cat Williams plays on the Knicks. This sell-off gets really looks like the same. Wait, sorry, it's not Cat. Wait, but his name is Cat, right? Hold on. Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Oh, sorry, Karl Anthony Towns. But they call him Cat. That's why. That was bad. That was actually really bad. That was really bad. It was my 5th time watching that, and it was so bad, dude. It was so bad. It was not good. I couldn't believe I said that shit. But that's what we're spamming Steve with, all right? Cat Williams. That's what we're doing it. I really don't, I don't think he watched the stream yesterday, so that he will have no idea why the hell we're doing Cat Williams, but there you go. Cat Williams. And we'll be spamming Steve for that. All right, thank you, everybody. I'll be back on the close. Again, red day. We'll see if this red continues to be red. Not as red as it was in the morning. S&P was down 1. Now it's down 0.68. We'll see if this recovers. Software was up. Now software is slightly red to flat. SoFi back above 15, and hopefully we can continue some of this momentum to the downside on some of these names that are a bit euphoric, but on the names that probably don't need it, you know, we can see a bit of reversal that's happening right now. And then we'll have Technical Tuesday with Jason later today. Yeah, Micron above 700 again. These dips, they last for a bit, then they come up. It could be a head fake, but as of now, you see more people jumping in. S&P barely down 0.5% today. All right, thank you, everybody. I'll see you guys on the market close. Bye, everybody.